across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You better believe it. I tell you what, busy doesn't even begin to cover this one this afternoon. We are rammed at this end. Welcome to the home of common sense. A tearful Angela Rayner has admitted underpaying £40,000, just £40,000, kids, in stamp duty on her plush £800,000 Hove flat. She's referred herself to the number 10 sleaze watchdog, saying she even considered quitting over the scandal. They never do they? We'll have more on that in a few moments. Also this afternoon, all British citizens could be issued with digital ID cards under plans considered by the Prime Minister to tackle illegal immigration. This is such arrant hogwash and nonsense, I don't even know where to begin. Talk about trying to trap as a sneaky way in, a sneaky gateway, if you like, to digital ID. How are you seeing that? And comedian Graeme Linehan, as you will now be aware, is set to sue the Met Police for wrongful arrest and breach of his free speech rights, claiming officers treated him like a terrorist over the so-called anti-trans tweet. I think the nation is completely behind Mr. Linehan, apart from one or two oddballs. I think everybody is behind Graeme Linehan on this, and possibly, dare I say, even the Prime Minister might be. Good Lord. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk. Welcome to the home of common sense. If you want to drop us a voice note on anything we're talking about here, then it's the same number, 0344 499 1000. Is this a sneaky gateway to digital ID? So everyone in the UK, this is just the logic of this. I don't know whether they think we're stupid or whether they just haven't realised how stupid they are. Everyone in the UK will be forced to have digital ID as part of the plans to be considered by Keir Starmer to crack down on illegal immigration. The PM has accelerated a review of options around the technology that could require all adults who will be legally obliged. If you're doing something like applying for a job, and maybe when you go to hospital, things like that, you'd have to prove you are in the UK legally, essentially. Apparently, there's some pressure from the French on this one, who demand that the UK lower the pull factor of illegal working as part of a deal. This was, of course, in July. This led to this absolutely hilarious, farcical one-in, one-out policy. Starmer has demanded ministers go further and faster on combating small boat crossings as he seized personal control of the government's immigration agenda. This is cobblers. Trying to crowbar digital ID in by saying it will tackle illegal immigration is a nonsense. It's like saying we're going to bring in compulsory wearing of sunglasses to combat retina damage. I mean, on that basis, it doesn't make sense. You might collar one or two people along the way. You wouldn't need it for the vast majority of people, like 99.9%. And frankly, those people that couldn't give a hoot will avoid it anyway. I mean, it's a ridiculous situation to suggest that you will somehow stop illegal immigration by having digital ID. Those who are hell-bent on working in the grey economy will do that anyway. You're not going to get around that by going, you haven't got digital ID, because they're not working in places where you need digital ID. If you're making moody cigarettes in a backstreet parlour somewhere in Greater Manchester, or sitting there in the basement of an East London flat knocking out counterfeit goods, then I'm afraid you're not even on the system. You're nowhere near a system. You don't want to be on a system. You're not going to be spooked by digital ID. And those people that come across the channel, by the way, just to bring that group into it, if they are granted asylum, they'd be entitled to digital ID anyway, because they'd be legit. So it really doesn't make any sense, which leaves us with the frankly horrific but not entirely surprising position that this is simply a government that wants to bring in digital ID, and suggesting this is all about immigrants and all the rest of it is just a nonsense. I mean, yeah, anything that can capture someone who shouldn't be here, on one hand, we think is great, but if to do that you have to somehow digitalise the entire population, then I'm afraid that isn't going to work. We all know that digital ID would be really handy. We get it, OK? On one level, we go, yeah, that's good, isn't it? How many times you had to fill out your flipping passport number, your driving licence, you can't even find the documents, you're looking for them. You're going to fill out a form to go on holiday. Can you fill in, you know, 15 different passport numbers because of the group you're going with. If you just went click, 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 and bingo, it was all done, you can see the ease. And of course, every system that we should be aware of is always flogged to us by seeing the ease. That's how it kind of works. Now, if you take it to its most nefarious and disturbing conclusions, yes, you do end up with something that even George Orwell couldn't have written. You would wind up with the government in charge of literally everything, and potentially, in the worst scenario, that could mean controlling what you eat and where you go. I mean, literally, not being able to track it, but actually controlling it. Oh, look, Bob in number 53 has bought too much meat this week. That's not good for the environment. Let's cut that down. He simply won't be able to purchase meat. He'll have no mechanism to purchase meat. Everything's going to be digital, the way he pays, where he goes, what he pays with, the system he uses, and it will register immediately. The minute you try to swipe your pork chops through the old barcode in Tesco, it'll go, no, sorry, this customer has exceeded their intake of pork chops this week. That's the worst thing. You won't be able to book a holiday because you travelled your allotted miles, etc. So that's the bit that sort of worries people. Is there another reason to be worried, or are you very relaxed about it? It's kind of interesting that it doesn't fully divide down left and right lines, this one. There's a lot of people very much on the right that see this as a really good idea, an inevitable journey of travel. And of course, it is possible you support digital ID without supporting the idea of being tracked or supporting the idea that the government should be given powers. Tony Blair has talked about this for years, and in fairness to Tony Blair, he doesn't hide away from the fact that, yeah, you do surrender a smidgen of your privacy, but you do so for the greater ease, the greater good of everything around planet Earth. Everything will function better if you have digital ID, and all of us, frankly, have digital ID. Are you buying into that? 0344 499 1000, or is this just a sneaky way to mention the immigration issue to get digital ID going? What are your thoughts on that? I'm talking to stuff that absolutely does not make any kind of sense. We've now got, in the last hour or so, this breaking news that Angela Rayner has admitted she underpaid £40,000 in stamp duty. So she purchased, as you do, as a good socialist, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to expand your property empire. So she's got one back home in her constituency, Ashton-under-Lyne, she's got that. And now she's got another one in Brighton. But she underpaid 40,000 quid in stamp duty. The Housing Secretary and Deputy Prime Minister has referred herself to the independent advisor on ministerial standards. She says she considered quitting over the row. Let's have a little listen to her, firstly, on Sky News, talking about this issue.
I took expert counsel advice on all of my affairs to ensure that everything was done proper, and that expert counsel said that the advice that I received was inaccurate because of the trust. I don't own the property, that is true. I only own one property that is mortgaged, like most people. But because of the nature of the trust that was set up by the court, that I would be liable to pay the additional stamp duty. As soon as I knew that that was the case, I have alerted and referred myself to the independent advisor on the ministerial code to ensure that they can look transparently at what's happened, and also contacted HMRC to say that there is additional tax owing on this, and that I'm prepared to pay that and fully comply with the HMRC as well.
What a nice girl. All rather hypocritical, though, it should be said, from Rayner, a long-time critic of Tory sleaze, as we know. Let's have a listen to her just over 2 years ago. This was her criticising a former Chancellor, Tory MP Nadeem Zahawi, over his tax affairs. Let's have a listen to what she said.
Every pound of tax that's not delivered to the Chancellor and to the Exchequer means that it damages our public services, and we know the state they're in. So the former Chancellor, when he was Chancellor last summer, made it clear at the time, when he was questioned, that he pays all his taxes and that he's done everything appropriately, and was threatening legal letters to anyone that questioned him. Now it emerged, actually, that that's not true, and that there was a HMRC investigation and that he's had to pay penalties for that. I think that makes his position untenable.
Oh, it makes his position untenable. What about your own, Ange? Comments on that along the way as well. We're going to keep across this story. 0344 499 1000. Chloe Dobbs is with us, political commentator. It's quite damning, isn't it? And, yeah, politicians have to be careful what they say because one day they might be in the same position. That's a kind of textbook case of exactly that.
I mean, that is just one of many clips from Angela Rayner and various ministers and the Prime Minister in the Cabinet that has not aged well. Almost everything that they do today, you can go back and find a clip where they look really hypocritical. And this is absolutely huge, especially because this is not the first time that she has got in a row to do with her houses and where her primary residence is, because before the general election last year, there was the whole row over the sale of her council house. She claimed that that was her main and only home, even though you've got some neighbours saying she's never there, she's always at the other house, and she registered the birth of her kids at a different house. It was all very fishy, and then she said, I've got some advice and apparently I didn't break any rules, but I can't share with you the advice I was given. I don't want to share it with you. And everyone thought, that's
a bit weird.
And they kept trying to get this story to go away, and it rumbled on for months and months last year. And now another one, even bigger story than before. You had her saying that her primary residence was the new Hove flat, which I think we can all presume is a holiday house, not a primary residence, for the sake of the stamp duty. But then for the sake of council tax, she claims that the house in Ashton-under-Lyne is her main house, because that means that the taxpayer will pay the £4,000 a year in council tax on her Admiralty House swanky 3-bed apartment that she stays in during the week in London.
Yes.
So
it doesn't really make sense, because obviously if you're the Deputy Prime Minister, your prime residence is clearly not going to be a holiday flat in Brighton, is it? It's either going to be your constituency or, more likely, Admiralty Arch, which is the sort of grace and favour thing you get with a job, fair enough. But that would be a prime residence, wouldn't it?
So what she is claiming is that she was able to say that the place in Hove is her primary residence because the house in Ashton-under-Lyne, after her divorce, they decided to put it into a trust for her son. She has a disabled son, and what she said in that interview with Beth Rigby is that because the son is disabled and the house has been adapted to suit his needs, they wanted to make sure that that remains the house that the son will be able to use for a long period of time. And so that's why they did that. So technically she doesn't own that house anymore, even though it's her constituency home, and she does, when she is looking after her child, she does go and spend time there.
To her neck,
it's very messy, but it is very. She claims that she hasn't been attempting to dodge any tax, and that she got advice and it was wrong. But to me, it seems like she was trying to weave her way around the rules.
But she would be able to surely produce a document. She should be able to produce a document. If I was going into that area of additional properties and the like, then at some point there'd be a paper trail from a solicitor, because she would say, I mean, everybody, when they're buying a house, adds up the numbers, they go, oh, I think you got the stamp duty on top, that pesky stamp duty. You would have it written down somewhere, or the question, what stamp duty will I be due to pay on this house? And somebody would have replied to that. I don't believe that would have been a kind of vocal conversation.
Well, she claims in that interview with Beth Rigby, she is basically trying to put all the blame onto the lawyer that advised her, apparently, that she didn't have to pay this additional 40 grand in stamp duty. It will be very interesting to see if she releases that supposed advice. As you say, there's probably something in writing somewhere, but remember back in the council house row, she was refusing to publish any of the advice that she'd given. Now, with the whole council tax row, she excused herself on the basis that, you know, I'm just a working class girl, I don't understand the complicated rules, I was too poor to have an accountant. I don't think that she can make the same excuse again, that she just didn't know better.
I don't think you can.
You are the Deputy Prime Minister of this country. I would say, especially given you've had a huge scandal the first time, it might have been a good idea to get advice from more than one person, to just double check that you're not creating a huge scandal, not only for herself but for the government.
Yeah. I mean, also, you know, when you work in her job, you know a few top lawyers because they work for the government.
Exactly.
You don't have to say to one of them, here, look, 35 quid and a bag of peanuts, can you work this out for me?
Exactly, even Keir Starmer's a lawyer.
So it seems to be based on this curious kind of quirk of Ashton-under-Lyne house being put in a trust. So when she went to buy the Brighton house, you are due normally to pay more stamp duty because it's a second property. And because of the value of the house, it would be even more as well. It would be a higher rate than, I can't remember what the brackets are. And it's one of those tiers that she kind of got put into the lower one rather than the higher one. Now, I'm pretty sure there would be a paper trail to represent what she's now told Sky News. There has to be. And if there isn't, then that would mean she'd lied.
Yeah, I think that it would be wise of her to release that advice if she is able to, because then that would help clear her name. I don't think it will completely clear her name, but it will back up her argument.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, anything anyone in this government says now, everyone just thinks, oh, this sounds fishy, I don't trust them on anything, because they've told so many lies. And with the whole council tax row, I don't think people really believed her when she said, oh, I've received advice, this is what it says, but I can't possibly show it to you. So I think that would be good for her if she can show it, but I'll believe
well,
it.
That's all it's going to take, isn't it?
But I don't think, even if she releases that, I think her reputation is toast after this, and it's a nightmare whether she stays or she goes after this.
Yeah.
It's going to be something that people just keep on coming. Journalists will keep asking questions about this.
Correct.
And when they, we've just had the date of the budget announced. There's a lot of talk about that. It's going to be very difficult for Rachel Reeves to raise taxes, in particular any kind of wealth taxes. You know, we hear all these socialists saying tax the rich, because everyone's going to say, oh, well, it's one rule for us and another rule for you.
Another rule for you. Yeah, I mean, this is absolutely fascinating in terms of how it pans out. And of course, what makes this, what pronounces this story in a more impactful way is that she's the housing minister.
Exactly. It's so hypocritical.
She's not some humble backbencher. She's literally in charge of this stuff.
And this story is the cherry on top of a huge number of scandals, not just involving Angela Rayner, but when you had the Minister for Corruption have to resign because she is being investigated for corruption by Bangladesh. You then have the Minister for Homelessness have to resign because she's evicted her own tenants. And now you have the Housing Minister talking about potential resignation because she didn't pay appropriate stamp duty on a house that she bought. And it's her department that is trying to crack down on those evil second homeowners who buy properties by the seaside and force the locals out. Even if she's done nothing wrong with her stamp duty, just when the story dropped of her buying a third home before there were any questions about the tax, was a scandal in and of itself, and it's just kept on developing. It's not going away. We've had this going on for a good couple of weeks now.
Again, if it's as she says, it should be easy to prove. It's not easy to prove. She would have a legal case herself against the solicitor, you might imagine. But we will wait and see how this one pans out. This is, I tell you what, get your popcorn ready, kids. We're going to move on to digital ID. I seem to remember Chloe has some interesting views on digital ID. We'll come to that in a couple of moments. That question to you: is this a sneaky way for the government to get digital ID in by saying, it's to track illegal immigrants? I think that's hammers and sledgehammers and walnuts, isn't it? It's some sort of nuts, I know that much. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
I'm coming on your show with increasing frequency because I realise it's much more effective than anything like Tinder or Hinge. I seem to be getting lots of DMs on the back of your promotion.
Let's just talk about this. Matt Vickers, ladies and gentlemen, let's just put this. He cares about the country. He's been very honest about the Tories. He's taken to going to IKEA with his parents at the weekend. The man is desperate for love, and every time he comes on the show, he gets DMs. Look at it this morning. You notice the shirt's undone to the waist. It's all going on, man. We're here to talk about politics, not your inability to get a girlfriend.
In my constituency of Runcorn, I have 2 people that this happened to over ill-advised tweets, but nothing terrible. Who, again, one of them has lost his partner, his girlfriend, lost his job, and it goes on and on. The impact on people's lives of this ridiculous policing of our speech.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. We've got Chloe Dobbs still with us. Big story, this one. Keir Starmer considering issuing all British citizens with digital ID in order. This is how nice Keir is. This is how astute and diligent our Prime Minister is. He's not doing it because he wants to track you or because he thinks it might make databasing you far easier and going forward more beneficial to a kind of global world. No, not our Keir. He's doing this because he thinks it might help with illegal immigration. I mean, what a nice man. Let's have a listen, though, to Wes Streeting. He was appearing this morning on Times Radio. He was asked about this very issue. Here's what he said.
Yeah, I'm actually quite enthusiastic about the prospect of digital ID being brought in, and what Pat McFadden, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, reported the other day from his visit to Estonia, where they've got digital ID working. We are trying to improve digital access to government services. We are trying to make sure that government keeps up with the times and changes with the times. There are potential additional benefits in terms of things like tackling illegal migration. Yeah. And I think this is a good debate for us to have.
Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, it looks like he's speaking from a hospital as he was doing that, which is fairly apt stuff. I seem to remember we talked about this once before and you were quite relaxed about it.
No, I don't think so.
No? Have I just invented an opinion for you?
Maybe. I think my view has always
Chloe
been...
loves digital ID,
No,
kids.
I do not. I do
Loves
not.
it.
Absolutely not.
She's got a microchip in her hand already.
I don't.
She's one of those people who's road testing the new technology. So what do you make of this? I mean, firstly, I mean, we get into the wider issue of digital ID, but the idea that this is to crack down on illegal immigration, I'm just not buying that. I'm
not buying that at all. I've been scouring the internet trying to find a good argument. I'm like, what is the thought process behind it? I'm trying to find a good argument as to how this actually is going to stop illegal migration, is actually going to stop illegal working. I'm open to ideas. I'm willing to listen to anyone who's got a good argument, but I am yet to see or hear one anywhere. But even if I'm wrong, and it will help stop illegal migration, I don't think we should even be talking about this until we've got the basics right, i.e. stop offering huge benefits in terms of fancy hotels, 3 lovely buffet meals a day, 50 quid a week on an Aspen card, bouncy castle trips, you name it. Why don't you just cut down on that, get the basics right first, before you even think about all this extra fluffy stuff like, oh, should we have a digital ID system? I'm really not convinced that this will stop illegal migrants
not at all
coming across or doing. The idea is this is going to stop illegal working, but I don't see how on earth it is. People who are working illegally at, say, a car wash or something, I highly doubt that they are working there because they have convinced the owner that they have a legal right to work here. The owner has just said, no problem, I'm happy to turn a blind eye. I know you're an illegal migrant. I'll pay you cash in hand, and maybe I can hire you for a bit cheaper than someone who has a legal right to work here. How on earth is a digital ID going to stop that from happening? The only way it would stop it from happening is if it were the case at present that all the people that are legally working in this country are working illegally because they have been able to falsely convince their employers that they have a legal right to work. That's simply not what is happening. And even if we should have them for illegal, so I'm not opposed. This is maybe where you thought I'm open to digital IDs. I'm not opposed to people who come here across the channel being given some sort of digital ID where it's only for people who have come here who they don't have a passport or anything to identify themselves. So maybe if they go into a shop and they need to show ID, or they need to show it when they go to the doctors to show who they are, they can have that because they don't have a passport or anything. But why on earth should the rest of us have it imposed on us just because a few illegal migrants that come across the channel need it? It makes no sense to me.
And why did you get microchipped? I mean, there's the question.
I've never been microchipped.
Okay. There are some countries in the world that are pioneering the microchip, though. There's some companies, and it is literally that little bit of skin between your pointy finger and your thumb where it goes, and it's essentially to open doors in the company you work for. So, you get a pass or whatever. I think it was Norway that trialled this and did very well. Anyway,
some people get the chip from their Oyster card and they put it inside like a magic wand or something, so they can swipe their magic wand when they go on the tube. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of hassle and faff, though, isn't it, to remember to take your wand with you when you go out for a night. But the wider issue of digital ID, I mean, we're going to explore that. Is it a sneaky way to get this on the agenda? What is your biggest fear of digital ID? 0344 499 1000. We can't finish without talking about what is going on with Graeme Linehan. And again, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, when he was appearing on Times Radio this morning, was questioned about free speech this morning in reference to that arrest of Mr. Linehan. Let's have a listen to what the Health Secretary said.
I think the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary have been very clear that with the law and order challenges we've got in our country, we want to see people being kept safe by policing streets, not just policing tweets. And one thing I would say, because it's always easy for people to criticise the police enforce the laws of the land that we as legislators provide. So if we're not getting the balance right, then that's something that we all have to look at and consider.
Well, he's only half right about that, because I don't think there's anything in the legislation that says you have to arrest somebody because they wrote a tweet that somebody got upset about.
Well, you've got the whole online safety bill, and that's probably where this comes from, right? Yeah. But the police, yes, they are enforcing the law, but the police also make decisions about where they're going to concentrate their resources. The police choose. You can call them and say, I've just been mugged, and they will say, sorry, we're not going to come because our resources are too stretched. We want to focus on more serious crimes. So the police do have the ability to choose not to focus on stuff like this and not to send 5 armed coppers to come with a van to pick him up at the...
onto an aeroplane. I know. Really?
I mean, so the police absolutely do have some responsibility here. But I'm glad to see that Wes Streeting has actually said, as parliamentarians, we do bear some responsibility here because we do have the power to change the law. He's been stronger on this than Keir Starmer, who is simply just shifting the blame to the police and not talking about changing the laws. I think Wes Streeting does sound somewhat genuine in how he talks about free speech, how he has done this morning. I do think he has some concern. Keir Starmer, on the other hand, it seems like he is just saying what he's saying. We believe in free speech in this country. The police need to focus on serious crimes, because he knows that Nigel Farage this week is in DC and he is going to absolutely roast him
100%.
in front of Congress. I cannot wait to see it, for the totalitarian state that we are living under.
We talked about this yesterday on the programme when Yvette Cooper gave that speech, if you can call it a speech, when she read essentially a press release written by some advisors on, was it Monday this week? I think it was on Monday. It was so woeful, inept, and there was no spirit. There was no kind of furnace, fire.
She said
in her
she was going
belly,
to bring Gazan students who might be.
I know. She's bring the Gazans along. That's a good start to solving immigration. I mean, there's all this cobblers. But my criticism of her was the same criticism of so many of our establishment politicians. Where's the fire in the belly? Where's the real philosophically driven ideas? Come off script and go, I'm not putting up with this anymore. That's what Starmer should have said this morning. Starmer said, I just opened my paper, nearly choked on my cornflakes this morning. Graeme Linehan's been arrested. 5 coppers. Sorry, not on my watch. That will not happen again. That's what you want to hear Keir Starmer say.
No conviction from either of them whatsoever.
It's horrendous.
Neither of them seem to care about illegal migration or free speech. They just say what they feel that they have to respond to the news. In this case, Nigel Farage going to US Congress, and in Yvette
100%.
Cooper's case, the whole roar over the Epping situation.
Yeah. Chloe, on that point, we hit the clock. Thank you very much indeed. Don't forget to put your palm up to the door when you leave, because that will buzz your little microchip and you can get out the building.
That's a good idea. I won't have to worry about losing.
Well, you see, that's how they sell this stuff.
I lose
isn't
the
it?
cards all the time.
It's very easy to go, yeah, think of the convenience. It's like a little grain of rice under your skin, and it zaps you through security. It means you can pay for stuff with it as well. You know, life's a good one. What's there to be afraid of?
Might spend too much money, though, if I do that.
Well, that's the other problem as well. Without even realising it, really. Just putting your hand up might spend 20 quid. Thank you to Chloe. Over to you shortly. 0344 499 1000. Charles Hymas from the Telegraph is going to join us on the digital ID story, along with our friend James Melville. Always got very strong views on this. We'll chat to both of them next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A lot of comments already coming in on digital ID. We'll come to those in a few moments. You want to bell us up on this and chime in with the debate. 0344 499 1000. You can also drop us a voice note there as well. And, of course, you can message 87222. This comes under the, I suppose, extraordinary news, predicted news, news we've discussed certainly before, that everybody in the UK could be forced to carry digital ID under plans considered by the Prime Minister. But his thinking for this isn't to tag everybody in some kind of nefarious utopian way, but actually to tackle illegal immigration. What a forward thinker our Prime Minister is. Supporters say it could stop migrants working in the black economy. Spoiler alert, it won't. While critics warn it could hit law-abiding Brits and push illegal migrants underground. Spoiler alert, it will. The Brit card is estimated to cost 140 million quid, and polls show 80% of the public backing digital ID checks. James Melville with us shortly. First, Charles Hymas, Home Affairs Editor at The Telegraph. Afternoon to you, Charles. I know you wrote about this morning. The bit that I think we're struggling with initially, I mean, there's a wider debate to be had on this, but certainly the government reasoning that this will tackle illegal immigration. What are we making of that?
I mean, the argument being that clearly if people have an ID number or digital identity, that their employers will be required to ensure that they have someone who has got one of those IDs, and that they are therefore employing someone who's legitimate. So that's the principle, as simple as that. But obviously there are already checks, and I think this is the argument the Tories are making, is that there are already requirements to register people, and people who want to employ someone illegally are not going to bother whether they have a digital ID or another form of ID. And so therefore, I think that the argument is that it's not necessarily going to make the difference that the government hopes.
And of course, people will naturally be suspicious. This debate has gone on for a long time about digital ID. We know that Tony Blair has been a true believer in this, and he speaks on it domestically, he speaks on it globally. His reasoning, pretty honest in fact, is that yeah, it does mean you surrender a little bit of privacy, but we're a global world and there's no other way than going forward, and if you want to go forward we have to work with new technology. That seems to be the thinking here, and that's pretty much the line that most other countries that support this will give. We're not quite hearing that from the Prime Minister though.
No, I think there's also a political equation here, is that France has been highly critical of us over black market being a El Dorado lure for migrants. And so therefore, as a result of that, if we don't have an ID card, we can't really sort of hit back at the French and say, no, actually, you know, we're operating something in the same way as you are. So I think there is a political dimension to this, that in a way we align ourselves with Europe by having an ID card, and that obviously fits in with the wider approach of Labour, which is to try and work with the Europeans on illegal migration.
In terms of, and in that respect, I guess, you know, that would be, you know, Starmer's certainly his public position, but is this merely a kind of sneaky gateway to bringing digital ID in a wider sense? What is your... You've got your ear to the ground on these things. What is your sense on this?
Yeah. My feeling is that the government would like to have something like that, because it clearly also has benefits in terms of tackling benefit fraud, keeping track on people, being able to link them to particular incidents or particular sort of accounts and so on. And so if you have all that great database, then that is a potentially big and useful thing, ostensibly to tackle crime, but it begs the question about our civil liberties, and I think that is a very, very big question. Yeah,
and it's also a valid question as well. And you know, we know in terms of, you know, it's okay. All right, we might have a bit of an iffy government at the moment. I don't think they're, you know, intent on. Well, I was about to say putting us in prison for hurty words. Maybe they are intent on that, but I don't think, you know, I don't think their intention is a nefarious one. I think it's a rather simplistic sort of maybe slightly left-wing one, although I'm pretty sure the Tories will be having the same debate on this at the moment. But of course, when you're legislating, you're thinking about policies that come in this respect, Charles. It's what a future government might do with it, and that, I suppose, is a reasonable a reasonable tentacle for debate.
Yes, clearly. I mean, we don't want to be in a situation. I mean, if you look at the way in which the Chinese operate with surveillance of virtually the entire population in one way or another, virtually to the point, as you joked earlier, about walking out of a room and having a chip in your hand, it's not far from that in China, I think. And so therefore, you know, it is a slippery slope, and you can only make a decision like this with a big consensus, and it wasn't in the manifesto. So you know, is it a knee-jerk reaction to a fact that they've lost the initiative on migration?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's exactly that. Charles, great to have you on with us, sir. Thank you. Charles Hymas is the Home Affairs editor over there at the Telegraph. Thank you to him. James Melville, social and political commentator, friend of the show as well. James, good afternoon to you. Look, I know, like me, we're big fans of Keir Starmer. You know, he's a top bloke. He's got it all. He's got it all. Is he there? Has he got it all sorted out? He knows what he's doing. I don't think he's with us. Is he with us? All right, okay. James, you with us? Hi.
I'm here.
Hello. Sorry, you weren't. No, nobody put you up on the screen, so I couldn't see you. I was assuming you'd lagged off somewhere. Big supporter of Starmer, of course. I know you are, and you love all of his work and his greatest hits. And this is just another one. I'm sure you're going to tell me it's splendid stuff. Bring it on.
Yeah, it's another example of government overreach. I think there's a number of problems here. First of all, how is this going to solve the problem? You know, it seems to me, again, it's a bit of deflection from Starmer and the government to say, OK, we've got a problem, there's the reaction, and this is our solution under the auspice of safety and convenience. the words and mantras of most authoritarian governments in history. You know, we've seen this playbook before. I mean, we've talked about this even in COVID. There has actually been a form of digital ID, universal digital ID, before, when we moved towards vaccine passports. So we have gone through this drill before, but there's other aspects that are a problem with this. And I think a conversation that needs to be had when we're talking about digital ID is about what exactly is the social contract between government and also the public. They're supposed to be working for us. You know, we pay their wages. And this sort of thing, it seems to me, another example of government overreach, whereby they're deciding measures that weren't in their manifesto that have profound implications in the future in terms of not just our privacy, civil liberties, but also where does the data, in whatever form it goes, where does it end up? Do we end up with data harvesting? Do we have privacy of information? And ultimately, what is the objective in terms of the thing that they're saying they're going to try and fix? Illegal migration. And it does pose questions about how far you take this, bearing in mind we have gone through this before with vaccine passports.
Well, we certainly have, and we know how easy, I say easy, how convincing the arguments were against those. I mean, they were pretty logical, very sound, intelligent arguments. The state argument, if that is the way to look forward, is, and again, I quote Tony Blair, is, yeah, you do surrender a bit of something, but it's all for the common good.
Yeah, well, I'm suspicious of that. I mean, again, it feels like government overreach. What government should be doing is addressing the root problem, coming up with solutions, root and branch. You know, in case of illegal migration, you know, take away the incentives, provide a deterrent, manage it properly. You know, these things are complicated. You know, we all understand that. But what we should be doing is effectively losing some of our own rights, potentially, as part of the solution. You know, the government, we are paying their wages. We've got the highest tax burden in history right now, and a lot of that is getting spent in the wrong direction. And that explains actually one of the problems with the anger about illegal migration, in particular what's going on with the small boats and the hotels, where we feel that we're not getting a return on investment on our taxes. This is another example of that potentially. It'll come at enormous cost. Who's going to get the contracts of this? What's the procurement behind this? And ultimately, what will the government do with this? Will it just be focused on one issue? I doubt that very much. It could then mission creep into other aspects of the loss of privacy and possibly other things bolted onto it. Where does it actually stop? And as you pointed out, what happens with future governments? Will this be ditched? Will other things be carrying on in terms of digital ID? And it is a bit of a concern, I think, that, you know, 80% of people would welcome a form of universal digital ID. I think there needs to be a public consultation and conversation about both sides of the argument on this in terms of what the government's suggesting and their so-called benefits versus the concerns and potential risks of something like this. Because this sort of thing, no one voted for this, but it's up to all of us to point out the potential perils. And it's quite ironic. I remember mainly talking about this 2 or 3 years ago, about how, well, you could see the government doing this at some point, whether it's to do with net zero, whether it's to do with immigration. And many of us were accused of being conspiracy theorists for suggesting this. And here we are, where this is now on the table. Starmer's been suggesting, and a few other government ministers. And I think we need to go through this thoroughly to show the public that there's potential risks if we go down the route of universal digital ID.
Yeah, there it is. Lined out brilliantly for us as ever, James. Thank you very much indeed for your time. James Melville, social and political commentator. That is the... I think the first debate I did about this was, I'm tempted to say maybe 20 odd years ago, maybe 25 years ago, the first time it was in that ballpark, because this discussion has been around forever, that you would have a sort of global database. That isn't a conspiracy theory, by the way. There's no conspiracy that it might happen. The conspiracy would be if it was used for nefarious means. That's the difference. Nobody doubts that in the technological progress of the world. This is more to do with kids who work in computing and IT in Silicon Valley than it is to do with politicians, by the way. Because the technology, you can't, these nutters can't, well, I say nutters, I say that kindly. These geeks can't stop inventing stuff, all right? So once you've invented technology A, it naturally leads to technology B. So it was kind of always going to happen. It's much like, you know, CCTV, which, you know, your doorbell camera, which they cost about 50 quid now, would have cost about £5,000 10, 15 years ago for something like, in fact, something that small and amazing that could then also be seen on your phone, didn't even exist. So the technology can't really be stopped. The existence of digital ID is not the conspiracy. It's whether it's used for nefarious means by governments. That's the conspiracy bit. So whether you end up being like China and social credits and that kind of stuff. 0344 499 1000. Jenny in Bicester says, to get a digital ID, what do you use as the system of truth of ID? Birth certificates can be forged and migrants don't have them. Passports, not everyone has. Driving licence, ditto. Bank account, not everyone has one. Same for national insurance number or tax ID. So how can you prove who you are if every current system can either be forged or open to British-born people only? Migrants throw their docs away, so why not give them proved digital ID? Well, it depends who they tell you they are, doesn't it, if you gave them digital ID, if they have no documentation. 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. What have we got to be afraid of is naturally one of the questions on this. Is this immigration line from Starmer just a sneaky way of introducing digital ID? We'll take calls on all of that, voice notes on all of that as well, and a bit of Angela Rayner thrown in as well. Your thoughts on Big Ange, where you think, I say that kindly by the way, where you think this story is either likely to go or where it should go. Is she going to walk the plank? Our lines are open. This is Talk.
Banner. Do you respect that right?
I respect the right to free speech, but that obviously has always had limits. The obvious, don't yell fire in a crowded theatre.
What about saying if someone should be punched in the balls? Is that something we should arrest people for?
I think that's inducement to assault. I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't sound like an appropriate...
So if it's inducement to assault...
Sounds like it's complete overreach by the Metropolitan Police and a complete overreaction. It it's quite worrying, actually. Just regarding...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
We are talking digital ID. On that very point, let's get a voice note. This comes from Elle.
I had my debit card cloned once. They took out about £1,500 and it took me over a month to get the money back. If you've got it all on that, they've got my name, my address, they've got my national insurance number, they've got my health records, they've got my medical records, they've got everything they need to clone you. And if it took me a month to get back that £1,500, imagine if they started taking loans out for £25,000 and you have to spend your whole time proving it wasn't you. Really worried about digital ID. Don't have it.
Yeah. Well, of course, the argument is that the AI boys would have stepped in by that stage and somebody won't. It'll be simply impossible to clone someone. Yeah, right. Let's get a call from Jackie in Oldham on this. Jackie, what are you thinking? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. Number one, it changes the relationship between the citizens and the state.
100%.
Because I don't think people realise, because it's not taught in schools anymore, of what actual rights we've been bestowed as British citizens.
Yeah, fair point.
And the deal is that we can go about our business and live our lives unless we're suspected of about to break the law or we've broken the law, and then we can be stopped in what we're doing and we face a trial and take the consequences. That's the deal. We are not here to be, when authorities deem fit, to be able to prove that we have a right to be in the country that we were born in, just because a government is that incompetent that it can't protect our borders. Why should we give up our inalienable rights? Number two, there have been 11 data breaches by the state, and it's actually being discussed in Parliament because the state is incompetent. We've seen it with the NHS, we've seen it with Afghanistan. It is incompetent at keeping hold of our data. Number three, there's no backup to this. If everything goes digital, what happens when the system crashes, like we've seen with the banking? We've got Land Rover Jaguar has had a cyber attack. Everything will come to a standstill. And number four, to prove your identity, more than likely will be on your phone. Well, considering we've got a spate of phone thefts that are happening every so many minutes,
yep.
You know, and with cybercrime being one of the biggest threats that we face, what about your identity being cloned and all the implications for that?
100%, yeah, 100%. I mean, you'd like to think whoever's advancing this or sort of flag waving for this policy will be able to answer some of those questions. Listen, Jackie, you get a great first call to start us off on this one. Thank you very much indeed. The other thing we're discussing, of course, is Angela Rayner. Here's a voice note, comes from Steve.
Is she honestly trying to say that she had to go and take advice from a legal person on her tax situation for this home? A simple search on ChatGPT will tell her exactly all she needs to know about the tax position in that scenario. Run it yourself, put it into ChatGPT, you'll see what comes out.
100%. I think the argument that she's advancing, I think, is that what made it complicated was that her house in her constituency is in a trust, and being in a trust means that when you get your next home, she's not kind of purchased a second home in the normal sense. I think it's something like that. All sounds a bit wishy-washy, doesn't it? Well, it sounds a bit something, that's for sure. Back on digital ID, Tracy, Burton-upon-Trent. How you doing, Tracy?
I'm fine, thank you, Ian. Ian, according to the Tony Blair Institute, it's going to cost about £1 billion.
Is that all?
Yep. Which, I mean, let's be honest, any government thing, you know, you might as well put a couple of zeros on the end of that. About 100 million a year to actually maintain it. So if it's £1 billion, that's an extra £57 million on our interest payments. I would actually like to know, one, who's going to get the contract, and two, how much personally Tony Blair's going to make out of it.
Well, I suppose would he make out of it? I mean, if he owned the company that's going to be involved in it, I guess he would.
Well, yes. I mean, let's be honest. Let's have a look at the digital NHS. It never works well. And the other thing is, people like my mother-in-law they're not digital people. So what's going to happen with people like my mother-in-law?
Who are not digital, I mean...
Who are not digital people.
The more you think about this, Tracy, that's a brilliant point. Like huge swathes of the population that simply won't be in this world. Some would say, well, that's an argument to never progress, isn't it? You've got to do something. But even if it was the case, I can't imagine how this could ever be efficient inside the next 20 years, in terms of I know we've done brilliant things with technology. I know you can do all sorts, sending an email is still a miracle to many people. I get all of that, but I'm not sure we're quite there yet.
Well, they've always been done by the private sector, haven't they? Let's be totally honest. Governments are not great.
No, keep governments out of stuff. They're usually rubbish, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's my major concern, because I think it's going to end up costing us a fortune.
Yep.
And I can prove my ID, passport, national insurance,
driving licence, all that kind
all the rest of it. So,
But imagine it all in one cosy place, Tracy, so you can just flick up your phone and go, bing, look, there's my details.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. It's just, why spend more money? Why we haven't got any for crying out loud.
That's a very good point. We haven't got any, and something as seismic as this is like kind of another industrial sort of technology revolution. Tracy, another great call. Thank you to Tracy in Burton-upon-Trent. Simon says, can somebody explain line by line, technically and academically, exactly how digital ID will work when you get 100 illegals entering the country on any given days? How will digital ID, rather than having a national insurance number, stop dodging employers employing illegals without doing their proper checks? Landlords have to perform checks, and they seem to manage pretty well with national insurance numbers. They need to explain exactly how, line by line, this will work with examples. It's a cracking point. It's not much to ask, is it? Yep, we like what you're saying, or maybe there is something in what you're saying. Can you show us your workings out? It's that simple. 0344 499 1000. What have we got to be afraid of? Digital ID and more. Angela Rayner as well is in the ring. Details coming next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's, as I said at the beginning, lots to get through, still lots to get through. We are talking many things we're talking about here. Angela Rayner admitting underpaying just a little matter of £40,000 in stamp duty on a 800 grand flat in Brighton. She's now referred herself to the number 10 sleaze watchdog, saying she hadn't even considered quitting over the scandal. She even considered quitting, I should say. It wouldn't surprise me if it was. I hadn't even considered it, but apparently she considered it for about 2 seconds and then decided not to, despite previously, many times, see Nadeem Zahawi for details, saying other people should walk the plank for similar indiscretions. Also this afternoon, comedian Graeme Linehan is set to sue the Met Police for wrongful arrest and breach of his free speech rights, claiming that officers treated him like a terrorist over these so-called anti-trans tweets. It is a jaw-dropping story. We'll have more response on that in a couple of moments. And all British citizens, as you've been hearing, could be issued with digital ID cards under plans being considered by Keir Starmer to help tackle illegal immigration. I mean, the last point is a nonsense. Keir Starmer isn't considering this because of illegal immigration. He's considering this because he's in love with the idea of digital ID. It's as simple as that. And don't shoehorn immigration into it just to make you think, well, people will buy it then, won't they? No, they probably won't. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk. Josh, in the sense of Graeme Linehan, I imagine. No two ways around it, Ian. The longer we have Labour in, the more we become North Korea. There's certainly a feel on that one. Debbie, I didn't realise Trump had digital ID cards, but he must do because he's on top of immigration. Good point. Philip says digital IDs, are they a road to the ultimate control of people, asks Ian. I don't think I quite asked that, but anyway, I take your point. That is a conspiracy theory. Oh, I forgot. Conspiracy theories are the work of crackpots, aren't they, Ian? As you regularly remind us. Yes, they are, indeed, and continue to be so. But digital ID is not a conspiracy theory. It's never been a conspiracy theory. The technology is there if you want to. Most countries around the world are either already doing it or planning on doing it. The existence of it, as I said before the news, isn't a conspiracy. The misuse of it would be the conspiracy. So if you suddenly discover you're being monitored on how much meat you buy or how much petrol you put in your car and how many holidays you're taking, then you get into the territory of something rather dystopian and undesirable, to say the least. I think we could call it criminal. Now, the head of the Met Police says officers shouldn't be policing culture war debates after arrests of Father Ted creator Graeme Linehan. Mark Rowley, this is. Linehan was detained, of course, over so-called anti-trans tweets, and the head of the Met says this puts police in an impossible position. Not really. The comedian is now set to sue the Met Police for wrongful arrest and breach of his free speech rights, claiming he was treated like a terrorist. Let's speak with Sam Armstrong on this, Legislative Affairs Director at the Free Speech Union. Good afternoon to you, Sam. I mean, this isn't even one of those stories, is it, that you, every now and again there's a story, you disagree with it, and but you go, OK, but I can see what they were thinking. This isn't one of those. I don't think anyone could, with a straight face and a scintilla of intelligence, could look at this story and understand at any level what the police or the commanding officer, whoever it was, what anyone was thinking on this.
Yeah, the police were not placed into an impossible situation. Pull the other one, please, Commissioner. The law on this is really, really very clear. They arrested him under Section 29B on suspicion of stirring up hatred against people on the basis of a sexual orientation. What, trans isn't a sexual orientation. Gay people find that offensive. Lesbian people find that offensive. A good deal of bisexual people find that offensive. The police didn't do their homework. They didn't get it right. They didn't try and apply proportionality. They got wind of a complaint from social media and they went full-blown Stasi. And that is offensive, not just to Mr. Linehan. It's offensive to everybody in London, myself included, who has been the victim of a serious crime, bags nicked, phones nicked, burglaries, all the rest of it, who has waited and waited and waited and waited and never seen hide nor hair of a constable, despite the fact that we've got good evidence, massive evidence, CCTV and all the rest of it. The police have got all the resources when they need it, and none, absolutely none, when they're not interested. And when are they not interested? When it's the crime that affects you, me, anyone listening to this.
And what I find, I mean, I don't know if I should be surprised or not, Sam, but what is extraordinary about this is that, you know, when somebody said to these cops, look, we want you to get down to Heathrow. I think they might probably based at Heathrow, I get that. There's a flight coming in. We want you to go onto the aeroplane, not go round the bloke's house later. Even that would be bad, but, you know, that might be slightly more but go onto the plane, arrest him, quite a public thing. And wouldn't one of them have gone, what, really? Really? What, for that? I mean, you'd like to think, and as you rightly say, I mean, like my 7-year-old could work this out. You struggle to get a response for really serious criminality, including car theft, house burglary, whatever. At what point does this kind of misdemeanour warrant an urgent and instant response?
Yeah, and wasn't the first copper with a submachine gun enough for him, right? Or wasn't two enough? Did we really need the third, fourth, fifth, sixth submachine gun, sidearm pistol, taser, CS spray, batons, all to go and arrest a slightly ageing, I hope Graeme doesn't mind me saying this, comedian who is flying in to already attend a court hearing? This is a man of good character with exemplary record of cooperating with the police services. They went in heavy-handed, and you see this all the time, to be honest, Ian, and like, let's just be blunt about it, right? When you get the likes of Ryan Giggs or other footballers getting arrested, as they have been over the years, you get 20, 30 coppers turning up to arrest them. Why? Because they all like to be able to go back to the restroom and just say, to the mess room and just say, look, I went and nicked Ryan Giggs. Look, we know what's happened. Everybody knows what's happened other than the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police Service. And as Robert Jenrick said last night, look, this is obvious, this is blatant, but the really annoying thing about this pathetic response from Sir Mark Rowley is that every day they delay, they just add to the amount of legal expense and compensation they're going to have to pay to Graeme. Now, look, we're representing them. There's no problem from representing him. There's no problem from our perspective, but it is annoying for the taxpayer because time and time again, individual officers, senior police leadership get away with this, and the taxpayer again and again and again is asked to pick up the hook to pay for things that they never wanted doing in the first place.
What are you making of Keir Starmer's response? He's telling police to prioritise serious crime after this. He obviously did that usual slightly boring, predictable thing of going, well, I can't comment on this because it's a live investigation. No, you can comment on it. You're the Prime Minister, mate. Get animated, get angry about it. You think JD Vance will be saying, I can't comment on this? I mean, it's all balderdash, frankly. But has Starmer gone a little further than he previously has in making a view on this?
He's not angry about this, Ian. He's not. He might be pretending to be. Yeah. Keir Starmer made it very clear what he wanted the police to be doing. As soon as he walked into office, we saw it straight out after Southport. They emptied the prisons. They cleared out 500 places by releasing dangerous criminals back onto our streets in order to make space for people who had committed offences online. The censorship of speech is inherent to Keir Starmer and this Labour government's priorities for policing in this country. I sympathise in some ways with the police because their Home Secretary, their Prime Minister, they are all telling them, this is what we want you to go after. We want you to go after dissent online. We want you to clamp down on this. It's the consistent message of comment after comment after comment from the leadership of this country.
Yeah, spot on. Sam, great to have you on. Thank you, sir. Sam Armstrong, Legislative Affairs Director at the Free Speech Union. And I honestly believe I don't think Starmer is conducting a campaign. Right, boys, get out there, look at the tweets, see what they're saying, cuff them and lock them up. It doesn't have to be that, you know, like the mafia don, as it were, never had to get his hands greasy himself. Other people do. But I would say this, if you look at Starmer's politics, his backstory, his record as a lawyer, the area of law that he specialises in human rights, coupled, married with his politics. If you look at that, it doesn't take a genius to work out that when it comes to things like non-crime hate incidents, which is sort of where this story, this grisly story began a few years ago when we started talking about people getting knocks on the door because they had an opinion on Facebook, as people talked about then, or they, lampooned a flag on Facebook. He has said, he's gone on record as saying that he can understand and see the use of recording non-crime hate incidents. Now, the fact that these bozos had the either audacity or stupidity to call it non-crime hate incidents. I mean, the clue is in the first bit. It's not a crime, so you don't record it because there's no crime. And if the state are not recording things that are not crimes, then they are simply recording your behaviour and your opinions. So right there is a big problem. Now, it's in Starmer's politics to believe that that is okay. And all right, it's not illegal to have that view, but he's now the Prime Minister. So that becomes a slightly more focused area of his backstory and his current opinions. The fact that the Prime Minister believes there is some use to police in holding on to stories about people's behaviour or opinions. Now, look, the old school copper would go, well, we were all about intelligence back then, weren't we? If someone had, nicked a dog in the area, I'm going to go round Dodgy Dave the dog napper's house and pay him a visit, because I know previously he's talked about nicking dogs. So he's never committed a crime before, but he suggested he likes the idea. This is much more than... This is the state databasing behaviour and opinions. So my point there really is Starmer, and I think you could throw in certainly Yvette Cooper, I think they're quite relaxed about this, and they're definitely more relaxed about it when the kind of people who are getting nicked with very robust opinions are perhaps disproportionately likely to be those on the political right. Hence the reason why not a lot is said. If you can lock up a righty, they're happy with all of that caper. Rory is in Hampshire on this story. Rory, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Name's Roy, mate.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, what have you got for us, Rory? Roy, sorry, mate. Roy.
Yeah, Ian, mate. I worked at the airport for over 20 years.
Yes.
And that guy apparently was flying in from the States, so the police intelligence would have had, 8 or 9 hours warning that he was on there. Yeah. So what they could have done was get a couple of plainclothes coppers to go on and have a word with him and arrested him. I mean, these coppers, these armed police, that's not their... All right, it's their job. The bylaws at the airport are different from elsewhere. But their job is this: you get some unruly passenger that's having a punch-up, or there's a hijack. That's their job, to get on board and arrest the people. Not an ordinary civilian like that.
I mean, did they even need to arrest him at all?
No, they could have had a word with him, but
even if you were going, I mean, the idea that you got, I mean, what's with the 5 coppers thing? What is that?
Well, that's the way they are, mate. To them, it would have been a jolly. One gets the call, or I'll come with you. Oh yeah, come on, we'll all go. And that's the way they are up there, They
even uttering the words, we're arresting you for some tweets. I mean, does that not feel a bit weird? As an armed police officer who came into this world in order to counter the bad guys, machete-wielding ninjas and those hell-bent on terrorism and destruction, isn't that what they were put on this earth to do? Not arrest the bloke who wrote Father Ted.
Ian, my uncle, mate, he's long gone now, but he was station sergeant in all the big police stations in London. He was chief training instructor at the police college.
Yeah.
He used to put them down at 2 at a time. He used to take the recruits on. He'd turn in his grave if we knew what was happening in this country today with free speech.
Yeah.
I was on, Facebook and that for about, a couple of weeks. In the end, I didn't want anything to do with it. The vile things that you were reading on there is unbelievable.
But, yeah, it is, it's a cesspit, and social media is, you know, quite a bit of the time a cesspit, and I absolutely hear you on that. But it's not illegal to be offensive. It's not illegal to be an idiot. It's not illegal to be disagreeable. It's not illegal to be controversial. And that's where this kind of weird line, nobody can quite fathom where this kind of line, you know, inciting obvious violence and the like would be illegal. I understand that. If you're instructing people to go round to number 53 Acacia Avenue and set fire to Madge as she watches Emmerdale, then I understand that would not be a nice thing to do, and it might require a bit of attention in the world. You know, social media is a bigger machine these days than just a bit of a hobby or a kind of moody chat room as they used to be. Great call, Roy. Thank you very much indeed for that. Roy in Hampshire, over to you. 0344 499 1000. I'd love to speak to someone. I know it's a big ask for our audience, that's for sure. Is there anyone that can support who believes Graeme Linehan should have been arrested? That what he posted, and for those, if you haven't heard the tweets that he posted, I'll read them in a second. Is there anyone who believes he should have been arrested for that? They're a bit juvenile, by the way. They're a bit silly. They're not even Graeme Linehan's part of his greatest hits, his greatest work. I mean, he's written some pretty powerful stuff on social media. The man's lost essentially his livelihood, his career, in some respects his name in the entertainment industry, from, you know, one of the most credible and respected writers of our time, Father Ted, and other stuff. He's done lots of other things in addition to that, either performing or writing. But it all went by the wayside when, you know, those closest to him, those co-workers, those fellow writers and producers just went, oh no, we're not going near Graeme. They should have supported him, but they lost their backbone and ran for the hills. He was left out on his Todd, but he stuck by his guns, and he's been through the mill ever since. So, you know, he's got form on this, and that's what he did. You know, he's allowed to have his opinions, and yeah, he was juvenile. They weren't his best tweets. Inciting violence, really? I'll read you the tweets in a second if you haven't heard them. Comments on that, 0344 499 1000. Digital ID as well, we're going big on that one too. What are you got to be afraid of with digital ID? What is your concerns, or do you embrace it? And Angela Rayner is still well and truly up to her flipping neck in it. Details coming next. This is Talk.
To access it, I do think that having a legal age limit is right when it comes to those products. But when it comes to the energy drinks industry, what they have done is the government is looking at targeting one industry when it makes absolutely no sense in terms of the actual harm that it has. I mean, children, about 10% of the caffeine that they're drinking is from energy drinks, right?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Those tweets, by the way, that Graeme Linehan wrote were as follows. One read, if a trans-identified male is in a female-only space, he's committing a violent, abusive act. Make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. That's probably the one that did it, I'd imagine. I mean, he's a comedy writer, for God's sake. Another was a picture of a trans rally with the caption, a photo you can smell. The third was a follow-up to his tweet which said, I hate them, misogynists and homophobes, F 'em. That was it. That was enough to get 5 men armed to greet you off an aeroplane, arrested, thrown into a cell, as a result of which you ended up having to go to hospital because your blood pressure almost exploded. And that was it. How did anyone... There's obviously a senior officer somewhere. I mean, forget the guys that were sent down there. A senior officer somewhere said, yeah, I think this man needs to be arrested, and I think we should arrest him when he comes off the plane. Not like when he gets home off the plane. Right. I mean, everything about this story is so skew-if. This is Brian in Retford on Digital ID. How you doing, Brian?
I'm good, thanks, Ian.
Good.
Great to see you and listen to you.
You too. What are your thoughts?
Cardwell, both top blokes.
Oh, thank you.
What I wanted to comment about was the digital ID, but in a way it does link to the Heathrow arrest, I think, because
go on.
My concern is if they introduce digital ID for the whole country, irrespective of whether or not it benefited the immigration situation, the problem is then that it's going to be applied to all of the population here. And I think back to when we were in lockdown and we had complete inappropriate actions taken, like spying on dog walkers in Derbyshire and stopping ladies out for a walk with coffees by the police and look out for themselves. But by the same token, we had a traveller's funeral in Manchester with 200 people swarming about, with nobody intervened at all. So I just feel it's going to be the easy target that gets stopped to shows your papers, you know.
It does feel that, doesn't it? And even if it wasn't that, because that's one potential kind of downfall or concern, but there's so many others, Brian. You know, there's so many other areas that you could go, well, you know, what is it? How much monitoring is there? And even if the monitoring isn't sort of part of a conspiracy, as in, you know, there's a load of rich people who are controlling the population, even if it's because it just makes their life easier, that shouldn't be our relationship with the state, should it?
Which is true, and I think there's an air of mistrust about in the country in terms of the current government in particular and authority in general, in terms of what people are trying to do to the population of this country, and whether they're listening to the population of this country, who are the vote payers and the voters and the taxpayers.
Yep, spot on. Great call. Thank you, Brian, for that. On this same point, digital ID. Charlie is in East Sussex. How you doing, Charlie?
Very good, Ian. Thank you very much.
Good.
Great show. I mean, what to talk about? You got so many things to talk about that I feel strongly about. This one's digital ID. Look, this year I've been away a lot. I've been to Canada, Spain, and the States. Not once have I changed any UK currency. I've done it all without a single paper dollar, if you like.
Right.
All done digitally. We're there already. we're on the slippery slope, and we're halfway down the slope here. So what we've got to do is stop ourselves sliding to the bottom of that slope. Now, when we're looking at an individual, the only sovereignty really we have left is ourselves as a person. That's our only sovereignty. With a digital ID card, that will be taken away from you. Yeah. When I go and charge my car up, I plug it in, they know where I am, how much electricity I put into the car, and I paid for it. So they already know all this about us. When it comes to taking that one step further, then that really means that...
There must be another reason.
Well, there has to be, because anyone can see my movements. You know, I have a tracker in my car. Yep. It's connected to the net. You get all cars with satellite navigation on.
Yeah, everything is there. So the fact that they need more suggests the agenda is greater than as it currently is. Could they argue that they are simply trying to kind of what's the word, streamline it so that it's simple? Because at the moment everything you're talking about, GPS and bank cards, that are optional. They need something that we're all in it, all or nothing, otherwise it doesn't work.
It doesn't work for them.
Yes, no, absolutely, yeah.
It doesn't work for them. Now look, Ian, when you say about digital ID cards, you've got these guys that go around saying, oh, it's a big part of the population saying, well, I've done nothing wrong, so I've got nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
Now, that's basically like the ostrich sticking his head in the sand, isn't it? Because, you know, the world's going past you, your head's stuck in the sand, you really don't know what's going on. For me, and I really believe this, it absolutely, 100%, nothing to do with illegal immigration at all, because if you're a legal person and you've got your ID, they're still not going to catch an illegal person that hasn't got an ID.
That was my point at the beginning. I don't understand that, because if you look at the moody economy, when you watch those border force programs and they go and smash down a force wall at the back of a Chinese takeaway, you know, people that are working in there or whatever they're doing in some a strange flat or factory making counterfeit goods, etc., you know, those people are still going to exist.
Well, of course they are. And what you've got to ask yourself is, what really is behind it? Now, there's only one conspiracy theory, and that's Bigfoot. Everything else doesn't really exist. When you look at a government, and you look at the policies that they're trying to push through, you look at the policies that will affect the population as a whole, and I will qualify that, Ian, by saying the legal population, because that's the only part of the population that any of this affects. Mm-hmm. What's outside of the legal population cannot be affected by this, because they're outside the system. Yeah. Whether you're an illegal immigrant, a traveller, or whatever, they're outside the system. So you've got to look at yourself. What is the reasoning behind it?
Because the very people they would want to catch, by definition, they won't catch.
They're not in it. So
they're not in the system. Yeah.
The other point I would make is anything that has Tony Blair's stamp of approval on it, you need to be going.
It's a good point. Yeah, I agree with that. I think, you know, if he says this, then clearly it's the right answer is the very opposite to what he said. Charlie, great call. Thank you for that. Simon in the Southwest referenced Graeme Linehan. Overreaction, it seems, with the arrest of that bloke is my opinion. But I will point out any reference to an act of violence, however low level, will get a reaction or a potential arrest. There are people out there nationally that only need the very slightest excuse, even if they're a comedian, says Simon in the Southwest. Yeah, that is likely to be the official answer, that if somebody says, as he did, if you see a bloke in the changing rooms, in a ladies' changing rooms, make a scene, call the cops, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. Now, there's clearly some satire and comedy involved in that line. So that's the first thing I'd say in response to Simon. But then the second thing would be, if they're really good, if violence is really the issue, then it would take you one sweep in social media to have a just a swift look to realise just how much of it there is there. You'd be arresting people every single second. But I hear the point. Maybe it's just as simple as that. It was the violent bit. 0344 499 1000. More from you on the way. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Police forces and local councils across the UK are alerting the public after a noticeable increase in parking scams this summer. Scammers are getting more inventive, from fake text messages claiming unpaid fines or even rigging parking machines that steal card information. This is a big issue, and apparently it's on the rise. Have you been the victim of that? Harry Kind is the consumer expert from the Everyday Expert. Always good to get your view on this stuff, Harry. I mean, there's nothing that a scammer won't think about, no nook or cranny of life they won't explore to see where they can get a few quid here and there, and parking seems to be one of them.
Well, that's the advantage, right? Parking is a big nook. Like, everybody parks. If you were trying to exploit people with, I don't know, dental appointments, it would be a lot rarer. If you're trying to trick people based on their very niche heavy metal music tastes, you're not going to get them. Parking, everyone does, but we're also constantly confused by it. People are constantly being fined by it. And as we have a kind of plethora of different apps, depending on which car park you go to, there are all sorts of different opportunities. And these scams can happen just via text. They can happen at the machine itself, or even with a fake fine on your windscreen.
And that's the problem, isn't it? What is the advice, when we talk about these kind of things, Harry, in isolation, it all sounds like any scam, isn't it? Everybody goes, well, I would never fall for that. I would know that that was a bit dodgy. But, these people, even like if you've got a ticket on your windscreen, it's quite easy to fake one of those letters and fake a website that goes with it, right?
Absolutely. If you think that you're unscammable, you are the easiest scam victim. There is a scam with your name on it somewhere out there, and we've just got to wait for that perfect time before we fall into it. It could be we're having a busy day, having a bad day, or we just so happen to have, done a few things that match up with what the scammer is asking of us. When it comes to those kind of fake parking tickets that you might receive, it's always worth knowing that those will have information about when the parking offence was committed, as well as your number plate. Those are things that are a little bit harder for a scammer to kind of print off in the moment compared to an actual ticket. if you're in doubt, you should get in contact with whoever has given you that parking ticket, if it's council particularly. But then you might get things like this. I mean, I found one of these live in the wild. This is from a parking meter, and this is a QR code sticker that was put on over the actual genuine QR code, which would allow a scammer to redirect you to their own parking app or own parking website, take your credit card details, and then scam you in the future.
Yeah, you see, again, that's a tricky one, isn't it? Because if the website, bearing in mind all the circumstances leading up to the scam are in place. You're in a car park, you probably have overstayed your welcome or not bought your ticket, so you haven't got any suspicion. It's not come out the blue in that respect.
That's right, and that would never work for a scammer. They are always looking for something where there is that suspicion where it could possibly be true.
Yeah.
What I would always say with these things is that you are actually able to, even if you get kind of fooled by the first few steps of a scam, you are able to kind of claw your way back. So one of these scams might take you through to pay for your parking. It might be £2.50. That might be a very similar scam to having to pay for a redirected piece of mail that you got a text about from Royal Mail, for example. They're trying to get that £2.50, maybe because they want to start a subscription in your name and then take £40 from your account every single month. Now, that scam only works if you're not checking your bank account every month. So it's really worth, even if you think, I haven't been scammed this month, checking your bank account and going, have I got a weird subscription here that I don't know about? And it could well be that that's from a parking scam.
Yeah, and that's the problem, isn't it? How can we be vigilant? I mean, or do we just have to say once in a while I'm going to get, there could be clear cases where somebody's just been a bit daft and, someone's written a parking ticket in Play-Doh and they've paid it. That would be silly. But if they are that convincing, like you say, the QR code is there, then, is there anything you can do about that? Even the most vigilant person on the planet could get collared by this.
That's right. I think with this, it's a case of do your own research. So don't trust a sticker on a parking machine that says this is the app to use. Go online and say, Buckinghamshire Council, what app do I need to use for parking? You can find that on their website and use that app. If you get a text that says you've got to pay for parking or you've had a parking fine, ignore it. Don't look at the links and do your own research. Go onto the parking website, go onto the council's website and go that way. Never click a link in a text if you can avoid it, and just don't take those kind of QR codes for granted. If you do the work to get there yourself, it's a whole lot harder for someone to scam you. Yeah. Fortunately as well, just on the bright side of all of this, we are finally seeing the national parking platform getting rolled out, which means that in the future, you will only need one app to pay for your parking in council parking. It's slowly being rolled out, but that will be a bright future and a whole lot harder to scam us.
Yeah, well, you'd like to think so. Harry, you've been great. Thank you very much indeed for that. Harry Kind, consumer expert with the Everyday Expert. Google his website. There's loads on there about all sorts of stuff, particularly this as well. Have you been there? Have you been nicked? If a scam is that good and almost bulletproof, then how do you swerve it? I mean, that's the problem. And I think the parking one is more genius than getting a sort of random text message saying HMRC or PayPal owe you some money and then, fill in this form, go to this link. That just almost comes out of nowhere. And around COVID time, you need to pay for a COVID jab. It's only £1 or 99p. Text this number or go to this website. Same thing, you go, okay, that's probably a bit iffy. Why would they suddenly message me on this? But with the parking thing, everything is literally in place to legitimise the initial kind of ticket or QR code, whatever it is you're being asked to click or swipe. Because you are in a car park and you have forgotten your ticket, you've broken the rules. So that bit is that's so real that when you see a ticket, wow, that makes perfect sense. I better pay it. Your brain is loaded with information that says, yeah, I've made a mistake. And I don't know, and if the ticket looks like a legit ticket, it's in the little packet, or the QR code takes you to a website that is, unless the website is just so stupidly fake in terms of the setup, but they're not usually at this level. Have you been on the receiving end of that? You can message 87222 or on the phone 0344 499 1000. Let's go back to some of your calls. On Angela Rayner, Peter is in Manchester. What do you got for us, Peter? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, sir. I hope you are well.
Very well, sir.
My view on Angela Rayner is a bit nuanced. And you've got to go, given the apparent complexity of her tax situation concerning her disabled son and the Ashton property, there can be some sympathy with the fact that she got her tax liabilities wrong. However, for parliamentary purposes, there can be no sympathy for her deliberate act of declaring two separate properties as being her main residence.
Yep.
If that is so, she must go. Not just as a minister, but as an MP as well.
I get what you're saying about the complexity. Yeah, and you're right. If that turns out to be the case as an MP, then you're completely compromised, aren't you? Your integrity is shot to pieces.
Yes.
In terms of the complexities of it, that one would assume, bearing in mind she said she sought legal advice on this and, you know, a house was in a trust, so that might, in her mind, have thought, right, so therefore the next house I buy is not like a second property in the conventional sense, it's actually a first property. If that was the case, you might think there'd be a paper trail to that effect, Peter.
To validify it, yeah.
Yeah, because I wouldn't know any of that stuff if I was doing the same thing, so I'd have to defer to a solicitor, a conveyancer that knows this territory, and they would have written that down. I would literally ask that question in an email.
Agreed, absolutely.
We will watch with interest. But you're right about nuances and paperwork when it comes to property. Peter, thank you very much indeed for that. It does seem, I mean, it may well be, by the way, it may well be that she holds the paper up, you know, one of those kind of moments, waving it, saying, look, this is what the solicitor told me. The solicitor said you put your house in Ashton under a trust thing, in a trust, because you needed to keep it for the considerations of your disabled son. So therefore, you are not due to pay stamp duty at this rate. You're only due to pay it at that rate. And if she's got that written down, she's absolutely bang in the clear. I'll be the first to come here and say, yep, she really did do nothing wrong. Assuming the first bit was true, that she put the house in a trust for that purpose, etc. Let's go to Jacob in Milton Keynes. Jacob, what have you got for us? Good afternoon.
Yeah, hi, Ian. Just wanted to speak to you about Linehan.
Yeah.
Initially and largely, I think arresting him was in the wrong. I mean, the police should be out getting proper criminals, etc. But he's slightly in the wrong himself. I mean, we've all got to play the game of life, and he seems to have been on some sort of personal crusade against the trans. And I mean, as soon as his wife said, you know, rein in these tweets or I'll walk out, or the job started drying up, his own sort of wisdom should have kicked in and thought, you know, I better rein this in. So,
well, he could have done, but he might have just thought, hang on a second, I'm right about this. I'm not going to suddenly kowtow to people who are anti-science or anti-facts. I'm going to carry on.
I get that. But we've all got to play the game of life. I'm a school teacher. Schools are very woke places these days. And we all have silly things like Culture Day and Diversity Day, and I've got to go along with it to pay the mortgage.
But I get that, but the idea. So he might be. I would agree that it's a bit stupid and career-ending to have doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down like he has, when he could have, you know, retained a certain level of objection to what he's seeing and retained his career. Now, I mean, that shouldn't be the case, but I wouldn't have done. I would have just gone, you know, this is a bit silly because I'm going to end up being unemployed and have no money. However, does that mean he should be arrested for them?
No, it doesn't. He shouldn't have been arrested. The police should be out catching proper criminals. But his approach was a bit childish as well. I mean, it's perfectly possible for him to have sent some tweets and not be arrested, just use slightly more formal, slightly more polite language. I mean, nobody's arrested J.K. Rowling, and rightly so, because she doesn't stoop to that sort of level. So he's a little bit in the wrong himself. You know, we've all got to play...
Well, all he said was punch a bloke in the balls, which is a sort of a bit of a carry-on film line anyway, isn't it?
That's true. That's true. But you know, you've got to be very careful these days.
But that's the problem, isn't it? That the issue around the free speech thing is you shouldn't have to be that careful. You shouldn't have to be careful where you can't quote Kenneth Williams or something.
No, I get that. You know, you shouldn't have to be careful, but we don't live in an ideal world. We've just got to be very careful what we say. I mean, I work in a very woke environment myself, and I've got to toe the line just to keep the roof over my head and to keep a bit of food on my table. And he just seems to have gone hand over fist with some sort of crusade based on the principle that I will have my free speech, which is just odd, really. As soon as his marriage was ending and stuff, he should have, you know, some sort of wisdom should have kicked in. He should have thought, well, you know, maybe I need to rein this in a bit.
Well, from his own... Yeah, I know what you're saying. If it was you, maybe if it was me, you'd think, I'm not going to go there because it's not worth the hassle and all the... You know, you've got to keep it up almost 24/7, as it were. I get you. Jakob, thank you very much indeed for that. But, of course, the issue of free speech is the overarching thing. If he didn't want to take that route, he should have been allowed, you know, he should be allowed to say these things on social media. He's not inciting violence, quite clearly. He's merely articulating, slightly with a comedic tone, about what you do if you're a woman in a woman's changing room and you see a man in there with a penis. That in itself is a violent act, is his point. He's committing an abusive act. So make a scene. Call the cops. Oh, and if all else fails, punch him in the balls. Boom, boom. You know, that's it, isn't it? That's what he's saying. 5 cops armed to the teeth. I know they're at the airport anyway, so they would be armed, so I get that bit. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. By the way, we've got a brand new Voice of Doom on the way. Coming next on Talk.
I do not think that, every single nanny state issue is an issue with children. I mean, I definitely think that children should be restricted from accessing certain things. For example, I think it's right that under 18s cannot buy cigarettes. Even though they're able to access it, I do think that having a legal age limit is right when it comes to those products. But when it comes to the energy drinks industry, what they have done is the government is looking at targeting one industry when it makes absolutely no sense in terms of the actual harm that it has. I mean, children, about 10% of the caffeine that they're drinking is from energy drinks, right?
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, just gone 10 to 3. So, brand new voice of doom. It's the mystery voice, but with a political angle to it. So it's always a politician. Let's have a listen to the brand new voice.
Every area of the country.
Oh, blimey, that's really hard. And again.
Every area of the country.
That's hard for a number of reasons. Is that male or female? Let's have another listen.
Every area of the country.
If you think you know who that is, 87222, 87222. Don't phone, just message. We will tell you after the news if we get a correct answer. I've got a feeling that's going to genuinely go on for probably 23 years. Can we hear it again?
Every area of the country.
Who's that then? 87222. We'd like to get a winner today. Just to prove me completely wrong that that's impossible. But I do think that's almost impossible. Can we hear it one more time, Amy?
Every area of the country.
87222. Back to your calls. Matt's in Cheshire on Angela Rayner. Matt, what have you got for us?
Hi, good afternoon, Ian.
Afternoon.
First and foremost, Reformer polling at 47% in Angela Rayner's seat and in my seat next door. So there's an eminent sort of doom about a future around here. If you were in charge of the housing department and a housing minister, you would imagine that you would have more access to information and knowledge about such things than 100%. Anybody in the country. And even if you didn't know it yourself because you'd just been appointed a minister, you would at least ask the advice of civil servants.
I was about to say, Matt, on that point, isn't there a kind of like, sort of, I don't know whether it's written or unwritten rule in the civil service or in the ministry sort of hierarchy where they would tell all senior managers, if ever you are going to purchase a house, the first one that's whatever, then please come to this department, they will check it over for you.
Of course, yeah, and then there's the fact that the PR department allowed her to put the rest of the story out into the public without knowing that it was a watertight from scrutiny. So at every level, yet again, we see how thick these people are. Yeah. We have all known this since they've been in power in our area. Mm-hmm. They're literally the stupidest people. You can't even conceive how stupid these people are. And she's going to get annihilated in a seat. I think that's what the seat in Brighton is all about.
Well, you think she'll get given a safer seat in Brighton for that reason? Although, is that a bit... Have they peaked a bit too soon on that?
From what I know, Ian, Labour have never been in threat in my life in these areas. And suddenly now, everybody's turned on them instantly. It's like within 6 months... Nearly a lifetime full of support has turned into total contempt, and they're going to be wiped from the annals of history around here and probably everywhere else in the country.
Yeah, I think so, and certainly in a seat where, as you say, Reform are polling so well. Good point, Matt. Thank you very much indeed for that. That's Matt in Cheshire. This is Chris in Epsom. What have you got for us, Chris?
Afternoon, Ian. Quick one on Angela Rayner and then on ID cards. Right, first of all, the lawyer would have just been doing the conveyancing. He would have taken instruction from Rayner. The paper chase that I want to see...
There would have been a question about stamp duty, though, right?
No. If you listen to me out, he would have acted under her instruction as to how she wanted it done. I want to see the paper chase from the wealth management company that either said to her, you do have to pay this £40,000, or if we phrase it like this, we can save £40,000.
If you right, okay. So if that is there, but what if it's legal?
It doesn't matter if it's legal. It's not a case of legality anymore. It's a case of morality.
Yeah.
She stood up in the House. She's called people scum. No,
I agree with all of that. I'm not absolutely sure you don't get any. I mean, if you buy a place, your solicitor will tell you how much money you owe.
Yes, but if you're being managed by a wealth management company, the wealth management company will put into course the way of doing things for the lawyer. The lawyer will follow that course from Rayner and proceed. That's how the 40,000 was saved. The lawyer would have said, "Oh, yes, you paid the 40,000 because he's not a wealth management company." But the wealth management company would have said to her, either you have to pay it because it will look bad, or if we do it like this and you think you can get away with it, we'll do it. Now, I think it's arrogance on her part. I don't think it's stupidity.
I mean, if that's what it says, then she's banged to rights, and she'll have to walk the plank. But if it says explicitly, you will only legally have to pay this money, then she's in the clear, isn't she?
Yeah, and digital IDs, right?
Yeah.
Listen, you said it earlier. The reason that they knew where Graeme was going to be was, of course, because of the advanced passenger information that you have to give to fly in and out of this country. All right, API.
Yep.
When you fill out your ticket, you put in API.
Yeah.
That's how they knew when he was coming.
True.
All right, and that's why they had 9 hours start on it.
Yeah.
So, can you imagine? All right, you've now got a digital ID. All right, that tells them when you're travelling, when you're on a train, and you've said some hurty words, or you've been on a protest they don't approve on, and they just track you everywhere. And then, as you said, later on down the line, we can have a carbon tax credit on there to limit the amount of fuel or flights you take. Then we can have so much meat, so much this, that. It's a very, very slippery slope. And they're using immigration. And don't forget that people are making a mistake. That these people are not throwing away their paperwork in the Channel. They're throwing it away in the Mediterranean because the EU passed a law saying that unobstructed travel within the Schengen area was for undocumented immigrants as well.
Yeah. I'm not even sure most of them bring any ID with them, by the way. I think we've talked a lot about throwing stuff in the Channel or the Mediterranean. I mean, you could just put it in a bin before you got on a boat, I suppose. Listen, Chris, I've got to move for time. Thank you for that. Here's the voice of doom.
Every area of the country.
Who is that? 87222 if you think you know. Back after the news at 3.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yes, welcome back to the home of common sense. As you've been hearing, all British citizens could be issued with digital ID cards under plans being considered by Prime Minister Keir Starmer. His reasoning is that this is all about tackling illegal immigration. This is hogwash, frankly. This is a desire to have digital ID, right? And be honest about it. Tony Blair was honest about it. Also this afternoon, a tearful Angela Rayner has admitted underpaying £40,000 in stamp duty on her £800,000 flat in Brighton. She's referred herself to the number 10 sleaze watchdog, saying she even considered quitting over the scandal. It's quite a big story in this sphere of how we look at politics these days. And Jenzers are taking the concept of ice-cold beer a little too literally, with nearly 3 in 10 Brits aged 18 to 35 admitting to putting ice in their lager. You people are sick. You should be in jail, you freaky beer monsters. What's wrong with you? We'll have more on that story a little later. 0344 499 1000. Before we go any further, we have the voice of doom, of course. This is the political mystery voice. Have a listen to the voice. Here it is.
Every area of the country.
Who is that? Let's hear it again.
Every area of the country.
Who's that? These are some of the guesses. They are. Was it Dido or Dido Harding? Dido Harding, wasn't it? I think, yeah, Dido Harding. Liz Truss, no. Liz Truss, no. William Hague, no. David Cameron, no. Natalie Bennett, no. Theresa Villiers, it wasn't. Yvette Cooper, no. Anne Widdecombe, I can see why you might say that, no. Nick Leeson, no. Wasn't he the moody banker, wasn't he, that went to, yeah. Joe Pasquale, it is not. Andrew Adonis, no. Carla Denyer, no. Here it is again.
Every area of the country.
We've got Kevin Schofield with us, political editor of HuffPost UK. Do you know who that is, Kevin? Do you think it's, by the way, do you think it's male or female?
I would say female.
OK, because a lot of people think it's male.
Yeah.
I can't say, obviously.
No, of course you can't. No, it does ring a bell, but
that's the trouble with these things.
Yeah, it's fiendishly difficult. No,
you're not sold on William Hague.
William Hague's got quite a deep voice.
Yeah, he's got a very distinct voice, hasn't he? A bit nasally, but...
It doesn't sound like... There was a couple of the... Theresa Villiers, I can see where they're coming from with that.
Theresa Villiers,
That's not a bad guess.
I think was she a former housing minister?
She's definitely in Northern Ireland.
She definitely did Northern Ireland,
yeah. No, I can't. I wouldn't...
Kevin Schofield doesn't know there's no hope for any of you. Kevin's encyclopedic on these things. So let's move to this story then, Kevin. Angela Rayner admitting she underpaid £40,000 in stamp duty on her £800,000 flat. She is, of course, rather inconveniently for her, the Housing Secretary, as well as being the Deputy Prime Minister, referred herself to the Independent Advisor on Ministerial Standards. She said she even considered quitting over this. Let's have a listen to what she said earlier to Sky News.
I took expert counsel advice on all of my affairs to ensure that everything was done proper, and that expert counsel said that the advice that I received was inaccurate because of the trust. I don't own the property, that is true. I only own one property that is mortgaged, like most people, but because of the nature of the trust that was set up by the court, that I would be liable to pay the additional stamp duty. As soon as I knew that that was the case, I have alerted and referred myself to the independent advisor on the ministerial code to ensure that they can look transparently at what's happened, and also contacted HMRC to say that there is additional tax owing on this and that I'm prepared to pay that and fully comply with the HMRC as well.
Now, there are many problems with this. One is what many are saying, the hypocrisy of her position, a long-time critic, of course, of Tory sleaze. Let's have a listen to her just under 2 years ago, in fact, having a right old pop at former Chancellor and Tory MP Nadeem Zahawi over his tax affairs. Here's what she said.
Every pound of tax that's not delivered to the Chancellor and to the Exchequer means that it damages our public services, and we know the state they're in. So the former Chancellor, when he was Chancellor last summer, made it clear at the time when he was questioned that he pays all his taxes and that he's done everything appropriately, and was threatening legal letters to anyone that questioned him. Now it emerged actually that that's not true, and that there was a HMRC investigation and that he's had to pay penalties for that. I think that makes his position untenable.
That was one of many comments Rayner made over the years about the evil, wicked, money-grabbing Tories. Kevin Schofield with us, political editor, HuffPost UK. Is she in trouble?
I think she's definitely in trouble. I mean, I think you pointed out a couple of things. There's the hypocrisy element. Yep. There's the fact, as you just said there, Ian, she was very much in the vanguard. Whenever there was any Tory sleaze, Angela Linehan was out there, real attack dog, having a go at her. 100%. And also the fact that she's housing secretary. That obviously makes it very difficult for her, I think, maybe to continue in that role. Well, you might
think that, if there was any way you could get advice on on what to do in kind of like tricky home transactions, there'd be a lawyer probably maybe in the opposite office opposite her. Go, Barry, what do we? You've got this trust thing. What do we? You might think you'd have access to that.
She, more than most, you would think, would be able to get the best advice. Now, she has referred herself to the Ministerial Code watchdog. Now it's out of her hands. It's she'll be interviewed by Laurie Magnus, and his verdict will be crucial, really. If he gives it the thumbs down, then she's in an awful lot of trouble. And it's difficult for Keir Starmer as well, because there's only a couple of days ago they had this big shake-up. It was in number 10. It's going to be, this is phase 2 of the government.
Phase 2.
And 48 hours later, they're caught in another sleaze row.
So, have I got this right, Kevin? So the claim is that the house she lived in her constituency, in Ashton, was put into a trust. So because it was put into a trust, therefore it didn't. What she bought in Brighton wasn't really a second property in the conventional sense.
Basically, yeah. And the reason that they had this rather unusual arrangement in the house in Ashton under Lyme is because her and her husband had divorced. Yep. But they wanted the children, including one of the children who's disabled, to stay in the house because that was their home. They didn't want the upheaval. And they then agreed that they'd basically split the parenting. The husband would do half the week and Angela would do the other half. Now, it would appear, and this is where it gets even more complicated, that she sold her share in the house to the trust. And that allowed her to freed up money to allow her to buy this place in Hove. Now, as you say, she then thought that would become her primary residence.
Because she said, I've only got one mortgage.
Exactly.
Which is the one in Hove.
Absolutely. And she received legal advice to that effect. It now transpires, she says that this legal advice was wrong, and that for tax purposes, the primary residence remained the one in her constituency. Now, I think it's all going to hinge on what she told this lawyer, who gave her the first piece of advice. Yeah. If it turns out that she hasn't given this lawyer all the relevant information in order to give her the best possible advice, then she's in trouble. And then we have to look at what the advice was that he gave her and find out if she followed that advice to the letter, because at the moment she's blaming that lawyer effectively for dropping her in it. And so there's still many
You'd think
questions.
That would be, in this world, it would be quite easy to establish this. There'd be a paper trail, an email that said, oh, by the way, Barry, I don't know why everyone's called Barry in this story. By the way, Barry, the man in charge at the housing department, the lawyer, they're all Barrys. By the way, can you tell me what? Because if I'm buying somewhere, you want to, you get a bill, don't you? You get there's many discussions. What's it going to cost? What am I likely to pay in stamp duty?
Yeah. Especially when there's so much money at stake. There's. It's £40,000 effectively that she may well have underpaid. I mean, she's admitted in that interview that she did underpay not council tax, stamp duty. Because the house in Hove is actually her second residence rather than her primary residence. So it's all very embarrassing.
But if she did sell the previous house in Ashton-under-Lyne to the trust, then you might say, well, she's in the clear then. Well, I think she has only got one house.
Yeah, well, I think it would appear that's the advice that she was given initially, but because of this unusual trust arrangement, that I think makes it less clear-cut, and that's why she's had this legal counsel has given her a second opinion to say, actually, by the letter of the law, that remains your primary residence because of the existence of this trust. That means that you're still basically you're still the owner. You're an owner.
You've sold some of it to the trust, and the trust is actually your trust.
That's the way it would appear.
Yeah.
Even though she's only got one mortgage, she says on this property that she bought this year near Brighton. In actual fact, for tax purposes, the house in Ashton-under-Lyme is still her primary residence.
Why is there not in place, when we see so many of these stories over the years that are kind of relate, whether it's sort of tax arrangements, that Nadeem Zahawi's story that she referred to and attacked him for, things like this. Does the Cabinet Secretary not sort of sit everybody down and go, right, if you're going to go on holiday or buy a house, you come here first. We will take care of your details.
Yeah.
We will cross-check every scintilla of whatever you filled out. You'd think that would be in place for to avoid exactly this.
Yeah, I mean, that would be one possible solution to it, because there's no doubt that I think politicians in particular are rightly held to a very high standard, especially cabinet ministers, because they are, they decide on the laws effectively we have to follow. And if they step out of line even by 1 inch, then they're in an awful lot of trouble. And clearly, I think she is in an awful lot of trouble. She probably wishes now that there was an arrangement in some way to take it out of her hands and leave it in someone else's.
You almost want a kind of, I don't know, a form-filling czar that works with the cabinet. Barry, who could go, Barry, I've got this form to fill out. There's a bit of a stamp duty choice. I've got A, B or C. Do I tick A, or should I go B, or could I get away with a moody C? And
but
I mean, there isn't.
Well, no, clearly not. And she is in a bit of bother. And as I said, her fate is now effectively out of her hands. Now, Keir Starmer stood by her at Prime Minister's Questions today. He kind of had to. He had no option other than to stand by it. But that, if the facts were to change and it found that she had broken the ministerial code in some way, ultimately be up to the Prime Minister then to decide whether or not to sack her. Now, Boris Johnson, if you remember, decided to stand by Priti Patel when she was found to have broken the ministerial code, and Labour were very critical of Boris Johnson for doing
100%.
that. So it would be quite tricky.
So you could break the code and still keep your job, of course.
Absolutely. It's ultimately it's up to the Prime Minister.
And those that examine the potential breach, are they fiercely independent? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
They're not like Starmer's mate.
No, absolutely not. They have found against ministers in the past, so they investigate this without fear or favour. In fact, I think sometimes they've been accused of erring on the other sides to avoid any accusations of non-independence. They can be actually tougher than they might otherwise have been. So she's. I'd be very worried if
I did hear a story this morning, by the way, completely separate to this, that Kemi Badenoch's educational CV is in a bit of question.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just occurred to me that she'd apparently said that she was,
It was Stanford, wasn't it?
Stanford. She'd been given a sort of like an offer at a university when she was only 16.
Yeah.
And apparently none of that is true. I'm going to take a guess it was a Guardian journalist that put this together.
It may well be, but if it's true, then it's embarrassing.
Because this is in the kind of Rachel Reeves CV department.
The Tories have had a lot of fun with Rachel Reeves' CV, so it'd be very embarrassing if Kemi Badenoch's in the same boat.
Well, the last I heard was that Tory HQ are standing by it and saying, no, there's nothing to see here.
I think they're more worried about the fact that Kemi Badenoch flunked it again at PMQ.
Well, how did she do? Was it not?
Well, clearly, so this story dropped at 11:20.
You were there, of course, in the press gallery.
Yeah, so it dropped at 11:20, which, 40 minutes, not a lot of time, but it should be enough time for you to rustle up 6 questions to hammer Keir Starmer on it. Her first question, she got up, she referred to Angela Rayner, and I'm like, all right, here we go, and then veered off and started talking about gilt yields and the high cost of government debt, which is obviously important.
It's important, but no, go on Angela Rayner, right?
Well, quite.
I mean,
but that was
all your questions.
Yeah, absolutely, but that was obviously what she prepared. And she didn't have...
That's a daft thing to do.
Yeah,
who's advising?
No one could believe it, really. A good leader of the opposition would have rubbed their hands and thought, right, let's get absolutely stuck in here. But she just didn't.
By the way, Kemi Badenoch has insisted she was offered a place at Stanford University, aged 16, after the university's admissions officer at the time said her claim was untrue. And I think the detail of that was that they would say, well, we just don't offer these places to 16-year-olds. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's quite unusual if they... unless you're some child genius.
And then I think in the meantime, she went on to college to do her A-levels.
Yeah, seems a bit odd.
Interesting. Let's just very briefly talk about Nigel Farage. Very, very upset about Graeme Linehan's arrest, as many people are. That's fair enough. He's going to be appearing before the US Congress to testify in a free speech investigation. It's interesting. He's been invited to attend this. This will be... you know what came straight to my mind when I think of British politicians attending... You know exactly what
you're going to say. George Galloway.
George Galloway, who gave one of the most indefatigable, whatever the word was.
Indefatigable.
Indefatigable.
It was a tour de force.
It was an incredible speech. It's online if you ever want to have a look at a British politician in action in a foreign jurisdiction. Then check out George Galloway's evidence to Congress.
He said this is the mother of all stitch-ups, I think.
The mother of all stitch-ups, I was trying to stop them buying oil. But you, congressman,
it was
were
great.
selling them. It was
He's
all
such
of that.
a talented guy. I mean,
he was a brilliant guy at that
orator.
kind of stuff.
Talented orator, very talented
Indeed.
orator.
Anyway, so along comes Nigel Farage in a similar capacity, but without all the indefatigable malarkey, I'm sure, unless he's going to throw that in just for, old time's sake, maybe he will. But he's going to talk about the... I mean, again, this line that America have developed and continue to develop, J.D. Vance heading it up, that, free speech is a bit dead in the UK. Elon Musk chimes in on all of these stories. Keir Starmer always goes, we have had free speech for a long time, and it doesn't really wash. This is going to stir the hornet's nest a little more.
It is, undoubtedly. The problem, though, that Nigel Farage has got is that his reform councillors in Nottingham have banned the local paper because they wrote a disobliging story, and they've stopped speaking to the local paper. So it doesn't feel very free speechy to me
it doesn't.
when you do that. Which again is one of those things where now that they're in power, they have a record to defend, and they are there to be held accountable.
100%.
So that's the difficulty. That's the difficulty for me. I can totally get why he wants to talk about Graeme Linehan, Lucy Cornley, all that stuff. But while your own politicians are banning journalists, I think that's a bit of a difficult one.
And also, it should be said that this is in a country that the president announced you go to jail for a year for burning the flag. The last time somebody went to jail for burning a flag, I think, was in Thailand, and they had their toes shot off as well. So
just for good measure.
Just a good measure, to make sure you don't go mooching around the place too much with your swan vesta or whatever. But I mean, that was, I don't like people burning flags. I think it's a bit, it's an act of arson. You could argue that point. It always looks a bit silly and juvenile to me, but I'm not sure I want to send people to jail for it.
No, absolutely. It's a freedom of expression.
Freedom of expression, right?
It doesn't feel very American, really.
It certainly doesn't. Kevin, thank you. Good to see you.
Nice
Kevin Schofield is the political editor of HuffPost UK. Thank you to him. Back to you in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000.
I'm coming on your show with increasing frequency because I realise it's much more effective than anything like Tinder or Hinge. I seem to be getting lots of DMs on the back of your promotion.
Let's just talk about this. Matt Vickers, ladies and gentlemen, let's just put this. He cares about the country. He's been very honest about the Tories. He's taken to going to IKEA with his parents at the weekend. The man is desperate for love, and every time he comes on the show, he gets DMs. Look at it this morning. If you notice, the shirt's undone to the waist. It's all going on, man. We're here to talk about politics, not your inability to get a girlfriend.
I do not think that, every single nanny state issue is an issue with children. I mean, I definitely think that children should be restricted from accessing certain things. For example, I think it's right that under 18s cannot buy cigarettes. Even though they're able to access it, I do think that having a legal age limit is right when it comes to those products. But when it comes to the energy drinks industry, what they have done is the government is looking at targeting one industry when it makes absolutely no sense in terms of the actual harm that it has. I mean, children, about 10% of the...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just before we go back to your calls, I want to get a quick word on this story. Quite extraordinary goings-on in the rail ticket pricing arena. In some areas, they're set to double on a state-owned railway this weekend. I mean, double. There's no exaggeration here. LNER is scrapping off-peak and super off-peak tickets, meaning some journeys will cost significantly more. The changes are part of a 2-year trial aimed at simplifying fares and making rail pricing easier to understand. Let's just get a brief word on this. Simon Calder, travel correspondent at The Independent. Afternoon to you, Simon. I was looking at some of the examples of this. I mean, they are literally horrific. People's ticket going up from sort of 95 quid to £200. I mean, this is not a tiny little increase. This is huge. What's going on?
Oh, OK. Yeah, it's a really alarming headline in the Telegraph, and a lot of people will be saying, I thought so, rail fares are just a rip-off. But actually what's happening is on the state-run LNER, which is basically Britain's flagship rail line connecting the north of Scotland with Edinburgh, Newcastle, Yorkshire and London, they have been kind of under instructions to try to simplify rail ticketing, because all the research shows that people are absolutely bamboozled by all the different rail fares. This is referring to a very specific category of tickets, off-peak and super off-peak tickets, which people like me, who've got too much time on our hands, are very keen to get, because it means, for instance, with an off-peak ticket, you could start off in Edinburgh, have your 11s in Durham, maybe go to York, a spot of lunch and maybe some shopping there, head down to Peterborough to see the beautiful cathedral, and still do it all on one ticket. Now, what LNER is saying, our trains are busy. We simply want people to mostly book advance tickets. If you want all that flexibility, then you are going to have to pay for an anytime ticket, which, frankly, Ian, feels more like more like an on-the-spot fine than an actual travel ticket. Or we'll do this, and this is the weird bit. We're going to do something called semi-flex. So you're able to buy a ticket that's valid on trains plus or minus 70 minutes. That's never caught on with me. I travel all the time on trains, particularly LNER. I'm not particularly worried about this, not least because the railway has an awful lot of people who will make it their absolute life's work to make sure that prices aren't actually doubling. They will find workarounds, so don't panic, everybody. But it is actually a really good thing to mention, because the only way we're going to get more people on the trains is by simplifying ticketing. Once you do that, then I'm afraid some fares go up quite a lot, others come down, others stay the same.
Yeah, I think most people would favour that if you're going to find, there's a really expensive ticket, there's the off-peak version, then make the expensive one the price of the off-peak rather than the other way round, which obviously is what they've done on some of these issues.
Well, they've just actually cut all the peak fares in Scotland, which is great, except it's all coming out of taxpayers' pockets, basically. It's not going to make enough difference cutting the fares to in terms of attracting more people on the railway. So it's a thorny old subject. I can absolutely guarantee we will be back for more of this when they say, actually, some fares are going up.
Indeed. But you rightly say, find a workaround. Do it, go online, do whatever you need to do, and maybe maybe you still get your cheaper ticket. Simon, thank you. As ever, Simon Calder, travel editor over there at The Independent. Thank you to him. Back to comment from you. Tom in Morpeth, Northumberland, says, Ian and team, I was just listening to your show about scams, and lo and behold, I received a scam message. Wow, that was from me, actually, Tom. P.S. Rayner should be sacked. Let's go to Andrew in Hertfordshire. Andrew, what have you got for us? Afternoon to you.
Yeah, the liability for your... I think you're an independent company, each one of you, aren't you? You act as sole traders or you have your own businesses.
Well, yeah, most of us self-employed, yeah.
Yeah. All tax returns, all VAT returns...
Yep.
It's your responsibility.
Indeed.
You can't offset that. You can't say... I gave that to someone else. It doesn't matter if you do, it's your responsibility.
True.
It's black and white. There's
But
no grey
can you
area
not,
in
Andrew,
that.
but if you literally sought the advice of a solicitor, a conveyancer, or whatever area this element deals with, who told you that your house is in category B when it comes to stamp duty or whatever the terminology is, so therefore, because of what you did with your previous house, you are only liable to pay this amount, then that would not be seen as some kind of criminal act. You might still ultimately be responsible, but people's view of what you did would perhaps change.
Yeah, it's a horrible expression, but it doesn't pass the sniff test.
Yeah,
as guilty as a puppy sitting next to a pile of poo. She has to go.
We will watch with interest. Thank you very much indeed, Andrew in Hertfordshire. One here from SD who says Angela Rayner has everyone forgotten that this is not the first time she's been embroiled in a property scandal. Yeah, indeed. I mean, that's what makes it even more curious, isn't it? She's been here before. On digital ID, Heather says you have to be careful with digital ID because there are hackers in the world and they will hack into your data and information. They will steal your identity, so there are downfalls to digital ID, so be aware. Was it Estonia that have gone full-blown on this? There are other countries, and most countries, most Western countries are either doing it or they're moving towards it. A digital ID card in France or Germany and most of areas of the European continent, you wouldn't struggle to sell that to the people. They've had ID cards forever, and the thought that it goes onto your phone rather than a piece of paper would not be suspicious. If that's all it meant, then you could go, OK, it's digital ID. It does the very basics that your previous ID card used to do. You wouldn't struggle at all to get that into the kind of public mindset. It's whether it's what it's connected to and who has access to it. And is there a further purpose down the line for this? And I suppose it comes into sharp focus when you think about health data and vaccinations and things like that. It will be required because everyone will have one, and if your health data says you haven't had the jab, then you can't come in. Now, if there is a bubonic plague snaking its way around the world, I understand the dilemma of that. I totally get the dilemma of politicians when it came to things like COVID. You know, you've got to put do we have a lockdown? I mean, even park jabs for a second. Lockdown. So you have a lockdown. Well, most of us are going, well, do we really need to lock down a whole country? Businesses, hospitals, schools, really? And we'd all go, well, no. Unless you're the person that's in charge and someone's in one ear going, well, you know, it's up to you, Prime Minister, but some evidence suggests, you know, another 500,000 people might die if you open everything up. And then you go, right, OK, I don't know if I can answer that question. And then it feeds into things like vaccinations, and I don't know whether I can answer that question. What I do know is you should never force someone to have a health procedure, right? You can't force somebody to do that. That's just number one. You can't force somebody to have a health-based procedure. So there's that. So they're all the additional implications. If it was just an ID card, people would go, yeah, all right, I'll have one. I've got ID everywhere anyway. Thoughts on that? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Lots to talk about here. Welcome back, 25 to 4. Now, what about this? We do like a Gen Z story. It should strictly, by the way, be Gen Z story, but it sounds a bit weird now. Gen Zers. Gen Zers do a lot of weird stuff. We know this. But they've kind of excelled themselves on this one by taking ice-cold beer very literally to another level with almost 3 in 10. So a third of those in that age group, which I think is 18 to 35, are putting ice in their lager. Now, personally, I think you should probably go to jail for this. I think this should be a criminal offence. 2,000 drinkers were studied by LG Electronics, found young adults love their booze on the rocks. Apparently this summer was big. Even red wine wasn't, so that's just a wine crime, right? Red wine wasn't safe. Around a third admitting they slip ice into that too. Let's speak with Tom Brighton, feature writer at The Sun, who put this theory to the test. I think I would be reasonable to say you're in this age group, Tom.
I am, yeah. I'm 24, so pretty much bang in the middle of 18.
Bang in the middle of it. We both know what journalism is like. People like to work hard, but journalism are like people who lay roads for a living. Like the old kind of Irish, they used to call them the Irish navvies back in the day, who would drink 28 pints of Guinness a night. But boy, would they be back there at 6 a.m. every single morning. They'd work flat out for 10 hours. That used to be what journalism was like. Nowadays, of course, we're all very, very nice, neat and tidy, well-behaved people, of course. However, the point is, you're in that age group. I don't believe you're somebody who puts ice in your beer.
I'm not, no.
Glad to. Otherwise, you'd have had to have left. You know, we wouldn't even have invited you onto these shores. No. So what's going on here? Is there a thinking behind this?
So there actually is. So when I first heard about this study, I was pretty shocked. I mean, I think it's a sign. I've got good friends. None of them do it. I don't do it. Yeah. But apparently it comes from the south of France.
Is that right?
Yeah, so people have gone on holiday there, seen it's a thing they do, putting maybe a couple of ice cubes, a bit more in their beer to keep it cool. And they've brought it back here to these shores, to pubs in the UK.
I mean, the thing is with a good beer, if you go to a good bar as well, they also, the glass is kind of iced beforehand, and then the beer that comes out the pump is iced, or if it's a bottle, it's iced. So it's pretty cold anyway.
Well, exactly, and this is what baffled me. A good beer is a cold beer.
Correct.
If you're putting ice in it, what you're doing is watering it down, making it potentially too cold or cold in the wrong way. You want the liquid cold, but when you drink it with ice cubes, they're touching your lips.
You know, on that thing in the back of your throat that you get when you're, when you were a kid and you had an ice lolly or something, like for some reason you run around for 10 minutes thinking your head's going to fall off because you've got that brain freeze thing going on. You put this to the test though. You tried a few.
I did. Well, you know what?
Must have been a terrible day's work that was.
Oh, it was awful. Well, it was worse than it is. There was no ice in it, of course. So that was a shame. But there was only one way. Maybe my generation was onto something.
Yep.
Spoiler alert: they're not.
They're not onto anything here.
Go to some pubs around here, and I thought proper pubs as well, not the kind of thing where you've got a few students behind the bar, although I've done that myself, but, you know, landlords, bar staff who really care about the beer they're serving, and see how it went.
And what happened?
It was disgusting. It was disgusting. First of all...
Did you do it at the bar, by the way, of asking?
Oh, yeah. I was straight up, what I'm doing, look, can I have some ice in that before you pour it? And
they didn't know you were from The Sun when you were asking this question?
They did, to be fair. Okay. But they were still absolutely baffled. A, that this was a thing. B, that anyone would want it. Yeah. And some of them, I think, did feel a bit of shame having to serve it. One actually did tell me he almost wouldn't do it, but he was curious to see.
Really? Because it goes against the bartender's code of conduct to be doing this stuff.
It does, absolutely. And I think some of them, you know, they've done it with ciders. That's understandable. White wine, of course. But some people my age are also putting it in not just lagers, but ales as well.
Ales as well.
And red wine. Which...
I mean, I would have thought for those ale drinkers, you know, you go in pubs, and depends what region you're in, they have sort of elaborate names of these kind of ales. I've never been a big ale drinker, but I would imagine that's probably sacrilege to lob ice into that stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Like you say, each one has got a super hyper-local name. It's been fermented in the most precise way by someone who can probably taste the difference between different types of trees that the barrel must be.
Pint of Vicar's leg, please. You know, this kind of weird stuff.
And When you put ice in it, it kills all flavour.
Does it?
Stone dead.
Because that stuff is about the flavour, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's about the flavour, it's about the smell, the flavour, all of that. And presumably, you'd have to kind of slightly not pour a full pint, wouldn't you, to get the ice in as well?
I think this is one of the other big crimes of putting ice in your beer is it seriously knocks the value of your pint. If you think about the amount, people will always go for a top-up if the head's too big or if it sort of spills slightly, and then you chuck in a few ice cubes in there. That's actually, compared to a pint glass, quite a serious proportion of the volume being taken up by.
So you put the ice in first before they... Before they pull the pint?
Yeah. So as you would say if you're putting ice in...
What are you talking, 2 blocks, 3, 4?
So I had all sorts, actually. It wasn't good with either of them.
Yeah.
One bartender I spoke to had a few people ask for it. He said apparently after he pulls the pint, someone would ask, I'll pop a couple in there, looking over their shoulder, because 1 in 10, the study also found, are ashamed. Too ashamed to even ask for it.
These people walk among us, Tom. I mean, this is the thing, they're out there. You know who you are as well, you people. To make it even worse, I mean, the only time I think I've ever experienced ice in a sort of alcoholic drink is when someone's opened a bottle of white wine and it's not quite cold enough, so they've chucked a couple of ice cubes in it. I don't even like that, because that dilutes the whole thing. But didn't you try red wine with ice?
Yeah, so a sizable proportion, I think even more than the proportion who are putting ice in their beer are putting ice in red wine, which to me just seems completely wrong. Red wine, I associate it with cosy Christmas evenings, things like that.
Yeah, room temperature, all
exactly.
that. Exactly.
Putting that in just made it a really, really rubbish rosé. And I'm no sommelier, of course, but it just tasted.
That's wrong, isn't it? Yeah,
completely wrong.
Yeah, I went into a place once. It was a restaurant. Ordered the wine. The wine turned up. The red wine turned up, freezing. It had clearly been somewhere. And I said to the guy, I said, mate, with respect, this is just too cold. And he went, don't worry, I can sort it out. I honestly believe that he put the bottle of wine in a microwave, because he came back with something that then became like mulled wine. By the way, I hate mulled wine, but even if I liked it, that's not what I'd ordered. It was meant to be a Merlot. And he then went, oh, OK, I can deal with it. Don't worry. And I said, don't worry, bring the cold one back, because that was preferable to the... So you have to be careful. Is this actually part of a wider story of Gen Zers drinking less, do you think? And do you believe that's true, or is that an urban myth?
It's true and false. I think some Gen Zs, like myself, I will say, still love their drinking. Yeah. If anything stops it, it's just because it's so expensive these days.
That's a good point.
Any pubs, sort of doubles are costing
£7 a pint.
£12. Literally, which is just too much money. But there are some who don't drink as much, certainly don't binge drink as much. Perhaps just don't like the taste of alcohol that much, which could explain why they're enjoying some ice cubes in their beer. Maybe they see all their mates are drinking there, they want to join in, but slip a couple in so they don't have to...
It's interesting. So you're 24. Corn-Fed Phil, one of our producers... Corn-Fed Finn, rather, one of our producers out there. He's just been offended I called him Phil. Corn-Fed Finn. He's 23. He likes to drink. Now, he also likes a rum. Now, the last person I knew that drank rum was like my great-granddad. It's like an old man's drink. I don't know what he's doing.
I don't know about that. I think rum's gorgeous. I think it's sort of...
Has this become a Gen Z drink?
Maybe. I think when you're youngest, you start off with vodka
Spice Ray, like Spice Ray.
Yeah, Spice Rum's brilliant. Spice Rum's brilliant. And maybe the spiciness sort of overshadows any cheapness if you're going for a cheap one when you're young.
I might try one. We're going out next week. I've got 2 things to go to next week. One is a funeral where I might raise a toast with a rum. I can do that. The other is a leaving do here at Talk Towers. So maybe I'll try a rum then.
Do it for us young ones.
But not...
missing out on.
I'd like to think I'm in the same category, to be honest, Tom. But not with any ice.
No, I think rum's one of those drinks that can really stand up on its own as well. If you've got a nice one, the flavour's really good. Makes you think of a Caribbean.
Whereas if you have a Baileys, for example, a bit of ice in that is crucial.
It's lovely. It's lovely.
Absolutely key to the whole thing.
It's lovely. I think Baileys... Actually, mind you, when I asked for the ice in my Guinness, which did get the worst reaction out of all my requests, someone said, don't bother with ice, put a bit of Baileys or a bit of Disaronno in there. And you've
just make it more alcoholic.
That might be why people like it.
That was a great day at the office you had then, Tom,
yes,
wasn't it? Sorting that out. Were you forced to come back and write it up there and then? Or?
I was, yes, yeah. I think the alcohol intake overall wasn't that bad. It was more the mixing that was the problem. I tried an IPA, lager, stout, red wine as well. It was difficult, and wasn't able to enjoy any of them either.
Yeah, and it was 9:30 in the morning to make. Love it, Tom. Good to see you. Thank you for coming in. That is Tom Bryden, of course. He is feature writer at The Sun, who put that ice in your beer theory to the test, and didn't think much of it. Let's go back to your calls. Grace is down in London. Grace, what have you got for us on Graeme Linehan? Afternoon to you.
Afternoon to you. I think on the one hand that I feel really strongly it's good to aim to have compassion for other people even if we really disagree with them. And that's a fundamental part of kind of my philosophy as a Christian, that you can, on the one hand, really disagree with someone, but because you view them as a human being, you ought to still have empathy. And I think too often in our society, we think that if you disagree with a person's actions or behaviour, it means you hate them, and it doesn't necessarily mean that, but it can also be the case that we don't have enough empathy or compassion when we disagree with a person's actions, and we need to think about that often. But I think that whilst I thus would not really endorse what he wrote, I think it probably does show a lack of empathy for people. I also think it might do,
but is it an arrestable offence? Yeah, 5 cops. To me, I'm confused by two. I mean, the overarching question is: should anyone be arrested for comments like that? But when you get into the detail, 5 police officers on an aeroplane. I mean, they weren't filming a movie, were they? I mean, come on, that could have just gone round his house, one bloke, and gone, mate, I'm sorry, I've been sent to arrest you. That would have been slightly more palatable.
Well, yeah, it absolutely would have been, but I don't think he should have been arrested in any case. There will be instances in which people should be arrested for incitement. If we have jihadi preachers, for example, encouraging people to carry out acts of violence, that, as one example, would warrant arresting. But I don't think that there's any genuine likelihood that someone was going to be physically seriously hurt because of this tweet by Graeme Linehan. And I've got to say, as a woman, I'm finding it a bit weird hearing people say that we need to, just given the nature of the tweet, the idea of being punched in that particular part of the body, I'm afraid I can't empathise with that. I'm aware that it would be painful.
Yeah, it's very
I can't
painful
really
indeed.
empathise for a particular biological reason. There are women who are scared that some men, even some men who aren't actually trans, are taking advantage of this situation with transgender to get into women's spaces. And that's not true of all people who are trans by any means, but there are women, particularly women who have been assaulted, who are really afraid. So I think that there needs to be consideration of those women as well as people who Graeme Linehan...
100%. Listen, Grace, making sense. Thank you very much indeed for that. Grace down in London. I don't know what the motivation of somebody who is clearly hell-bent on going into a woman's place pretending they're a woman, or enjoys dressing up as a woman, they're a cross-dresser, rather than someone who's been on a journey and psychologically they have different sense of who their own gender is. I think we all get that. Nobody wants to, this argument never became contentious because of people who hate trans people. It became contentious because of absolutely mad, extreme, Marxist thinking, politicised nutjobs who decided that they were going to invent a gender spectrum and anyone can be whatever they want to be at any time, which is why you see blokes with beards and bulges in their trousers walking around the place saying, I'm a woman and I deserve to be treated. No, you're not. You're just messing around with politics because you want to mix it up a bit. And then, of course, you get certain institutions that say, well, if that's how somebody identifies, that's their right to do so. This is cobblers. This is absolute. That's where the hassle started on all of this. This subject never existed in any respect. I've done this job long enough to know that for the previous 20 years, up until the last 5, no one ever talked. It was never a subject. Never, ever did this come up as a phone-based debate or subject. Never. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, these lunatics arrived, which kind of did a massive disservice for people who genuinely have a very different view on their own gender from the one they were born with and live their life and have had surgical procedure. We're talking about 2 different things, apples and pears or whatever the phrase is, or is it oranges? I don't know. You take the point. So there's an issue there. So how many people go into women's changing rooms because they want to do something sexual, they want to assault somebody, or they just want to have a look? I don't know. To me, that is not the issue. That is not the issue. It's a massive point, but it's not the main issue. The main issue is whether or not somebody, even if they're not going to assault someone, is allowed to just simply identify as a woman and walk into a woman's change room? And the answer to that is no. What do you do about somebody who has gone through the entire procedure and absolutely does look like a woman? And I don't know the answer to that, because would that also mean then the other way round, that blokes, trans men, would then, who look like men and are quite big and beefy and burly and have a beard, do they then go back into the women's change room? I know it's difficult, but I understand where Graeme Linehan is coming from. 0344 499 1000. Now, before we crack on, our biggest competition to date is now live, and we're giving you the chance to win a whopping £25,000 plus Oasis tickets. 2 lucky winners will win a pair of Oasis tickets when they return to Wembley. 27th of September, they are back in town. Plus, that's not all. Alongside the tickets, we're giving one listener the chance to win that huge £25,000 prize. That's big money by anybody's standards. For all the details on how to enter this incredible competition, have a listen to this.
18 plus, UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word cash to 83338 and you're in the draw. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission. Or you can enter for free by calling 0330 880 3338. All entries must be received by the 19th of September at 9 a.m. This is a TalkSport limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full terms and conditions at talksport.com.
His girlfriend lost his job, and it goes on and on. The impact on people's lives of this ridiculous policing of our speech, it has now got to the point where, it's actually quite frightening. Reform's policy, of course, is to repeal this ridiculous Online Safety Act.
What about the right to free speech, Natalie Bennett? Do you respect that right?
I respect the right to free speech, but that obviously has always had limits. The obvious, don't yell fire in a crowded theatre.
What about saying if someone should be punched in the balls? Is that something we should arrest people for?
I think that's inducement to assault. I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't sound like an appropriate...
So if it's inducement to assault...
Across the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
It is indeed Talk. 0344 499 1000. Great messages on the way. This comes reference the strange thing about what you put in your drink. In fact, where's that gone? Didn't you put one down there, Adam? I'm sure. Yeah, I got nothing there. Let's just rejig. I want to do some drink texts here. Here it is. Mandy says, red wine and lemonade, ice cold. Don't knock it until you try it. Almost a sangria. Mandy, you're twisted. I'm telling you now. You've got to get therapy for this stuff. Cornfed Phil, one of our producers, he likes sangria. The Yam Yam Plumber says, when I lived in Bangkok, we would have ice in our lager. It was a way of keeping us hydrated while on the sesh. Love it. Mart says, Ian, try a Kraken Dark rum. Even better, Kraken do a rum with a hint of coffee. Flipping gorgeous. That sounds lethal, though, doesn't it? You've done that, Finn. Finn's done it. Kraken is gorgeous. You start sticking a coffee in it, you get into sort of espresso martini territory. And if you have, I swear, more than 2 of those at the end of the night, will, frankly, you're done. And Sandra in Basingstoke says, ice in Baileys. No way. I thought it was all about ice in Baileys, isn't it? Brian in Westcliff, when I lived in the Philippines, it was so hot the ice in the beer helped keep it cold. A worse sin is ice in a cocktail shaker for a vodka martini. Dilutes it. A good bar should keep its vodka in the freezer. Even Bond ruined martinis. Let's get a quick word from Nick in Suffolk before we speak to Peter Cardwell. Nick, on Angela Rayner, what have you got for us?
Yeah, I was a solicitor not that long ago. I'm not excusing her for a single second, but I read a very interesting thing in a broadsheet over the weekend, and that is that a gift into a trust for minor children, does not divest you of that property for the purposes of your next purchase for stamp duty purposes.
So where did she get the information that it did then, or who told her?
I do not know, and I speculated to your very nice assistant, but I bet you anything you like what happened. She went to one firm to divest herself of the property, okay, as part of the matrimonial proceedings, right? And then she goes, I want to buy a place in Brighton or Hove or whatever.
Yeah.
I'll use the local panel solicitor. Because you're told, okay, if you want to buy it, you use our people. That's often the case. Mm-hmm. So she shuffles along to them. They produce a form for her saying, this is, and what you tell us on this form is sacrosanct. We're relying on this because that's the way these forms operate. Yeah. And she says, you haven't got another property? No, I've given it away. So in her mind, she goes, yeah, I've been perfectly frank and honest. And now I very much doubt whether she probably in her mind, and she probably said to her solicitors that divested the property for it in the first place. Yeah. So I don't own a property.
Yeah, she has. She made the point in that comment. She's only got one mortgage. So that's her. And the mortgage is the one that she pays in Brighton. Yeah, so therefore, she felt on safe territory.
Yeah, yeah. So you know what they say, asses assume, right? And so what is absolute political dynamite for this lot? If you get that wrong.
Yeah, and she should have double-checked. Yeah. So even if she knew, like, the kind of innocence or gullibility or lack of knowledge is no defence, right? So I imagine that's where she's going to end up. We will see. Nick, I've got to move for time. Great call, though, to finish on that point. Peter Cardwell is here. A man of many homes, flipping all over the place he is.
More on Rayner on the ropes, and Drive, of course, will also be reflecting on Nigel Farage. He has been talking just in the last few minutes, actually, to Congress, to their Judiciary Committee, in regard to what he says is the problems with free speech in this country. He's talked about Graeme Linehan being arrested by 5 armed officers yesterday.
Why was he asked to give evidence on an issue in our country to another country?
Well, this is a long-standing thing, and certainly, I mean, these committees can ask anybody, and Farage, of course, has many allies in the MAGA movement of the Republican Party. So this was, we've had over a long time, both Trump and especially J.D. Vance, the Vice President, talking about the many problems there are with free speech in this country as well. Some would argue, of course, that Trump has cracked down on free speech by not letting people into the country who have put things on social media he's not happy about. Reform has also been under pressure in Nottingham as well for not speaking to local journalists. They say that's actually suppressing free speech and
so
free
when you
press
start
there.
to look, no one's got a consistent record on this, have they?
Nobody's perfect.
And then, of course, as we said earlier, Donald Trump saying you go to jail for a year if you burn the flag, which if you want to do that in your own backyard on a barbecue, that's your right, you'd have thought, in the American